Okay, all right. We are on Rumble. We're on Kick. Not on Odysee because they refuse to remove pirated videos of mine, so they can eat a dick. We got to talk about, well, I was on a show. I'm going to show you this, Friend or Foe, talking about Donald Trump. I don't kick in for 36 minutes into it because of the time zones. I was in Japan, just got back last night, in Korea now. But I got to talk about the Twitter news first. So let's get into it, shall we? First of all, it's a new CEO. It's not a new trust and safety czar. That's the person in charge of censorship. Looks like Rumble's going slow. Let me show this. Not show this. Share this out on Telegram real quick. Let people know what's up. Boom. Yeah, Twitter in 6 weeks going to have a new CEO. Linda Yaccarino or something like that. Little turd. Why does it say 7 Eastern? This should have been at 9 a.m. Japan time, whatever that is. Whatever, I'm going to stream anyway. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't care. I want you to see this. So first of all, we've got Linda Yaccarino from NBC Universal. Look at this. Thanking Robert Kraft and his team, right, for their stand up to Jewish hate, where they want you to put a dark blue square or light blue square wherever, who just says, you know, put that in your profile. I assume that's on Twitter or something. Well, that's nice. Except Robert Kraft, as you can see, the graphic right next to it. Robert Kraft resigns from Apollo board amid Epstein controversy. Yeah, him and Leon Black from Global Apollo. Let me get rid of some of these. Here you go. Judge orders destruction of alleged sex tapes of Robert Kraft. If you don't remember, Epstein actually compared himself to Robert Kraft. Robert Kraft was getting... he went to like a happy ending massage spa something in Florida, and apparently that wasn't enough. He allegedly raped 2 of the women, but they destroyed the tapes. The judge in the case... By the way, Robert Kraft raping girls... worked for Global Apollo with Leon Black. And what did Leon Black do? And of course, there you go. Kraft resigns Apollo board amid Epstein controversy. Okay, and what Leon Black got for paying Jeffrey Epstein $158 million. Wow. And it ended up being more than that because he had another $10 billion he put through this LLC. Not only that, okay, I'm going to move some of these graphics away. Not only that. Let's move this over here too. Epstein was on the board. Shoot. That's why I need a guy in the chair. Just going to erase this. Epstein was on Leon Black's board, the Deborah and Leon Black board, as a trustee. So... he's on his foundation as a trustee. He gets $168 million. I think that it ended up going up to $180 million that we know of. Robert Kraft's raping trafficked Chinese women in Florida. But hey, you know, the new Twitter czar decides that'd be good people to partner with. We need Restream to work. Deleted it. Whatever. I don't have the graphic. So I don't like having to be the guy in the chair and be the guy delivering the content at the same time and holding the mic arm because I still don't have a table. God damn. 6 weeks she'll be the new CEO. Now, the CEO of Twitter is more or less in charge of advertising and that kind of stuff, not censoring people. although they will get to decide whether to hire or fire people on the Trust and Safety Committee. The head of the Trust and Safety, Ella Irwin, is another, leftist shill. This is why they allow the NAFO people. I can show you this. I'm not going to show you, but go to my Twitter and look at one of the top stories. They're allowing the NAFO people to threaten to rape somebody's wife and threaten to kill people and all, and that's okay. But he gets suspended for defending her. So this is the kind of crap we have at Twitter. They still won't let Jeremy McKenzie back on. They still won't let Scott Ritter back on. They still won't let Sarah Westall back on, and a long list of other names. But those three aren't controversial at all, and they're not allowed on. Because even though Elon got rid of the Trust and Safety Advisory Board, which included the ADL, it was good he got rid of that. He replaced Yoel Roth with Ella Irwin. So we went from a Jewish pedophile in Yoel Roth and a leftist. And he advocated. It's not like he did pedophilia. It's not like he actually did it that we know of. But he advocated for it. He thought that adults should be able to solicit minors on the gay dating app Grindr for sex. It's kind of like Alan Dershowitz tried to justify pedophilia in porn because you're not actually interacting with the kid. I guess he forgot that somebody's interacting with the kid, taking pictures of him. Nude. Mr. I kept my underwear on. Dershowitz. By the way, Yoel Roth. Robert Kraft, and Leon Black, all 1 degree away from Epstein. And now this was their partnership, right? Robert Kraft and NBC Universal. There's plenty of there too. That's going to be our CEO of Twitter. Hooray. Anyway, if you have a Shekelchat, put it in. I'm dropping the friend or foe thing now. I do not appear for 36 minutes, but it was a pretty good panel, so you should listen to the other people there. Pete Quinones was on. Thomas 777 was on, and some others. So without further ado, I'll give you this, and I'll shut up for a minute. This is 2 hours long, and I will pop in 36 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, mesdames and messieurs, welcome to a brand new Friend or Fed, the show that questions your priors. For the purposes of this conversation, a friend is someone who's advancing or strengthening the dissident right's position in politics, culture, or media, and a Fed is either a direct agent of the deep state or someone who is doing their work for them, but not on the payroll, which is the worst kind of Fed. We are joined by some of the greatest dissident minds and creators to discuss the most important question of the age. Is Donald Trump a friend or a Fed? But before we introduce the panel, I want to acknowledge our Rumble Live viewers. We are starting to kill it on Rumble, so thank you all. I'd like to ask you to like, subscribe, and share this video or this live stream to your friends. You can also join our locals community by pressing join at the bottom of the screen. And if you want your super chats, do you want to join the conversation, you can send us your super chats, and we'll read out your comments or questions as they come in. Yeah, Mark, that's your cue.
All right, I guess I will introduce our illustrious panel. We have Thomas 777, first-time guest on the show, and our favorite returning guest, Mr. Pete Quinones and LB Muniz. And this is it. I figured we'll just sort of kick things off with the number one running around clip on the interwebs today, which is the response from CNN from the town hall / debate Trump just held, and we'll take it from there.
If anyone wants to pause a comment, just let me know to pause.
Yeah, I have a spot already.
And disappointment.
Hang on a second. Let's get this volume up.
Many of you are upset that someone who attempted to destroy our democracy was invited to sit on a stage in front of a crowd of Republican voters to answer questions, and predictably continued to spew lie after lie after lie. And I get it. It was disturbing. It was disturbing to see and hear that person refer to a black law enforcement officer as a thug, an adjective he used many times to describe black men, and call Caitlin Collins, the moderator, nasty, which is what he calls any woman who stands up to him. It was disturbing to hear him speak so highly of QAnon conspirators and insurrectionists who assaulted police officers in our democracy on January 6th. And it was awful to hear him spread ridiculous lies about the election. And it was certainly disturbing to hear that audience, young and old, our fellow citizens, people who love their kids and go to church, laugh and applaud his lies and his continued defamation of a woman who, according to a jury of his peers, he sexually abused and defamed. As good a job as Caitlin Collins did trying to fact check him, it is impossible to fact check fully because he lies so shamelessly. Now, many of you think CNN shouldn't have given him any platform to speak, and I understand the anger about that, giving him the audience, the time, I get that. But this is what I also get. The man you were so disturbed to see and hear from last night, that man is the front runner for the Republican nomination for president. And according to polling, no other Republican is even close. That man you were so upset to hear from last night, he may be president of the United States in less than 2 years. And that audience that upset you, that's a sampling of about half the country. They are your family members, your neighbors, and they are voting. And many said they're voting for him. Now, maybe you haven't been paying attention to him since he left office. Maybe you've been enjoying not hearing from him, thinking it can't happen again. Some investigation is going to stop him. Well, it hasn't so far. So if last night showed anything, it showed it can happen again. It is happening again. He hasn't changed.
So there you
He's
can,
running hard.
because
You have
I
every
think.
right to be outraged
Okay,
today,
little
angry,
playthrough.
All right, all right.
But do you think staying in your silo and only listening to people you agree with is going to make that person go away?
Okay.
Your silo? Like what does that even mean?
Watching
Silo?
CNN.
Like SILO?
Yeah.
Okay, you're
Oh, Lord, sweet Jesus. Okay, thoughts?
I mean
Pete, let's hang on. Pete,
no,
let's-
yeah,
we'll-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
We'll start with you. We'll try to segment it out. Oh, you're muted there, bud.
Yeah. Where do you even start? I mean, everything that came out of his mouth was just pure, Bernaysian propaganda. I mean, everything that came out of his mouth was a lie, as he's saying that everything that comes out of Trump's mouth is a lie.
Can I just to add to your point here? What's amazing to me is how they're not even being subtle about how you're supposed to feel. Like he's literally telling you how you're supposed to feel in that clip. It's stunning if you weren't already prepared for it. Like when it actually hits you in your face, you're like, wow. There's the ball sack. There's the fucking ball sack of Anderson Cooper. Just fucking.
I've seen that clip several times, and the first gut reaction I had was like, the projection of what they think of their audience, because it really, like, you're being talked down to like a kindergartner and told this is your perspective, and of course you agree with us because we're telling you how to feel, right?
The sad thing about an Anderson Cooper is, I mean, this guy is basically like American aristocracy. And he could be on the side of good. He could be powerful on the side of good, but he's not. He's just another one of these people who got pulled aside. I know he applied for the CIA, or he was in CIA training at some point. I don't hold that against him. I don't think that everyone who joins the CIA is a bad person. But I just look at people like this and I have personal thoughts about the man himself, but pretty much everything he's done for his whole career is just to prop up the regime and the side of the regime that is, against people like us. So,
Thomas?
The point I've been making for years, and I'm sure people are tired of hearing it because it's, cantankerous old guy stuff. That's not even good propaganda. That's this kind of weird effeminate man just like literally shrieking things. I mean, I don't. There comes a point where, Eric Milke, the chief of the Stasi, the night after the Berlin Wall came down. He addressed the Volkskammer, and people just started laughing at him because he was just like sputtering over and over. This is imperialist, oppression. It's returned. It's 1933 all over again. Like I demand, you stand up in the name of the revolution. Like people just like laughed. Like what can you do? I mean, I don't. And something that put the people. It's like, okay, I was on the ground on January 6th. Every time I hear one of these media people or somebody shriek about this man tried to destroy our democracy, pretty much every week there was a violent protest in the year 1968 in this nation's capital in opposition to the Vietnam War. Reaching its zenith, about 500,000 people were mustered, about 40,000 of whom on one occasion made it to the Pentagon and were confronted by armed U.S. infantry and told to step back or they'd be fired upon. Nobody ever, it wouldn't have even occurred to anybody to say, like, George McGovern is trying to destroy your democracy. Like, I don't even know really what that means. It's like, okay, so people protesting constitutes an armed revolt with intent to overthrow the government of the United States, and that Donald Trump is a Svengali figure, or maybe like a Jim Jones figure, who has the power to force people to obey his orders. And finally,
he's Machiavelli for people who don't know who the fuck Machiavelli is.
Okay, but Machiavelli couldn't like say things and raise an army like apparently Donald Trump can do. And finally, okay, if I'm to take these postulates at face value, people protesting can cause the U.S. government to be destroyed. Does that mean that we live in a state of anarchy de facto? I mean, what am I supposed to glean from that? What I saw on January 6th was people protesting. I've seen it many times before. It's the same thing that happened in Seattle in '99. It was a little more intense, probably in terms of the emotional energy than Occupy Wall Street. It's something that happened again, on a weekly basis at the height of the Vietnam War. Like what exactly has Trump done? Like nobody can point to that. It's almost to be a COVID. Like people hysterically running around, like we're all gonna die. Like what's exactly underway? I'd ask people. Like, are people? God forbid, has your family died? Have friends of yours died? Do people are they on their deathbed? No. What are we talking about then? It's like, Trump is evil. He's the worst person who ever lived. He raped this woman. He's destroying a democracy. What is he doing exactly? I mean, was Reagan destroying a democracy when he went behind Congress's back to arm the Contras? I mean, I'm not saying that was good or bad. I'm genuinely asking because I don't understand what I'm supposed to glean from these things. Like these statements on their face don't make sense, or at least they're incomplete statements because they don't mean anything unless some sort of subsequent information is proffered so that they do make sense. And I'm not being obtuse. I'm being entirely honest here. Like I ask these questions of people all the time. Like regular people as well as people in some role of authority, and I'm met with sputtering rage, like I'm talking to a little kid or something, or like a mentally ill person.
I think if January 6th happened in a vacuum and it hadn't come after post Summer of Floyd, where we saw all the riots and burning down cities, then the image of people invading the Capitol building could have been more effective in terms of like, oh shit, this is amazing. This is a major moment. But we just went through the Summer of Floyd where we saw major cities being burnt down.
100%.
So by the time January 6th rolled through, it's like, what? No fires? Like not even no fireworks? Like
those guys who invaded the Capitol. I saw one of them like mooning some statue. Some guy was waving the bloodstained banner, which is fine. The bloodstained banner is near and dear to my heart. Some other guy was like taking selfies of himself, giving the finger. Like again, this amounts to a fraternity prank. Probably a little more serious because you're talking about vandalism of public property. But like, what universe do these people live in? Where unarmed men acting kind of rowdy and foolish and breaking property is literally an attempt to destroy the U.S. government. I mean, is that the Soviet Union couldn't destroy the U.S. government with the world's most mighty military apparatus, but guys dropping their drawers in the Capitol can destroy the government? And
of course.
I honestly don't understand. I don't understand.
Well, it's all facade. Listen, I got to jump in here. I'm really sorry to do this.
No.
I'd rather ruin the show now than have it be bad. As soon as we went live, I got a really bad white noise on my end. Jason says he can't hear anything, but I just turned up the Rumble
chats saying there's this, the audio sounds good. So,
but I can hear when I turn it up on my phone here. I don't know. It's like really loud white noise, and it can't be just me. I don't know if people aren't picking it up. You hear the white noise? Here. On my end, Jason says he can't hear anything, but I just turned up the Rumble chats saying there's this, the audio sounds good. So, but I can hear when I turn it.
I'm listening to the Rumble feed. I don't hear it. So I don't know. Maybe
how am I getting white noise in my headphone and on the Rumble? Okay, anyone in the chat, if it's bad, let us know.
Yeah, please let me know, because I just replugged all my cables
there.
Because is it me?
It's gone.
Okay, I just fiddled with my stuff, so it might have been me.
Blame the Cuban. Always the freaking Cuban.
All right,
swimming across the channel with your like freaking.
I think the person who messaged me before messaged me again. Let me know if it sounds good on your end. It sounds good here now. So
okay, LB.
See, all I needed to do was speak, and everything got better. Let's see if we can put this show back in gear.
We're just waiting for the voice of LB.
What Anderson Cooper does there, right? And yeah, he is American royalty, right? Vanderbilt, all that kind of stuff. Is he signals something that I've noticed other influential media people in the corporate press and government officials doing well, which is they build the emotional case for why you have to continue to hate everybody who supports Trump or marginally likes Trump or basically disagrees with anything that's a progressive talking point. And then at the end, they signal to the general liberal ethos, right? And he did that constantly throughout that. He's like, these people are your neighbors. All these evil people, all these nasty thugs that destroyed our democracy. And they're your neighbors. They're your family members. Yeah, they're your family members. They're people who go to church. All of these things and symbols. And then at the end, right? But we have to be able to listen to these sorts of people because there still needs to be this appeal towards a prior generation's idea towards like, well, all sides should be listened to in some respect. I mean, I think in general, one other point I thought would be useful, kind of knocking out the bad at the beginning of this conversation, is it's all well and good to point out the spectacle. I think we'll come back to the spectacle of Trump, the spectacle of the media circus that is modern American politics, but it's not sufficient. It's not sufficient to point out that, hey, CNN had Trump on because they knew it was going to be great ratings. Yeah, dude, that's the game. So we're here to maybe point where the errors are in the game or where things can be different, but just simply pointing out the game is being played, to me, isn't enough to like actually make a point that's worth having, right? I think if you're in this space,
this is not a Timcast level of analysis here. We're trying to go a few layers deeper.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh, well, the Bud Light thing is all good press. Yeah, I get it. I know marketing 101. It's all publicity. It's all rhetoric. That's just the time we live in. So, re-examining our priors about Trump and, and the connection point to an outlet like CNN can't be overstated, because we know that they purposefully amplified him in 2016. He's a monster of the media's creation, right? That is a good starting point for the phenomenon that is Trump.
Pete, what do you have to say about that? If anything. Muted. You're still muted, bud.
I'm an asshole. Let's move on. I'm a real professional, guys. Doing this a long time.
I mean, well, as long as you're engaged in the stream, man, it's just we're just happy to have you here. Okay. So here's the thing that I. Sorry, Mark. Do you want to throw in something quickly on that, or
no? Go ahead. I was just gonna. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the things that became really apparent to me, it's one of those things I knew going into preparation for this show, but it kind of solidified as I was doing research, listening to Ryan's and yours, Pete and Thomas's series. Sorry, Pete and Thomas, you did the series on the Cold War, and one of the things that really started solidifying my mind especially at the end, was that the sort of almost the war between the elites at the time of the end of the Soviet Union, between the George H. Bush faction and the neocons, and how what they envisioned Russia to be. And I almost feel like to start the Trump story and to get to the bottom of where who Trump is and what he is as an entity, not as a human being, you kind of almost have to start there. We could go further back, but I think, let's say, the end of the Cold War will be a handy place to start, because I think that's where you start to see obvious factions begin to develop, and also I'm going to toss this both back to you and Pete, to Thomas and Pete for this, but talk to us about sort of that division line between the George Bush Sr. and the Cheney or neocon side, end of the Cold War, and what those factions begin to look like. Because I think going forward, we start to see that split, and that split is distinct in the political conversation we're about to get into.
Go ahead, Thomas.
I mean, that's a different phenomenon than what we're talking about if you just want to talk about Trump and what he represents within the electoral paradigm, within the media narrative, and contra the deep state. It's related in some ways, but the degree to which foreign policy considerations touch and concern Trump is somewhat secondary. A lot of people support Trump who do support him, like on grounds of those considerations, but that's not a primary raison d'etre for his ascendancy. If you want me to kind of
let me put it this way. It's pretty obvious to me that okay, so here's a narrative. Here's a narrative selection we can go with, right? Donald Trump was not supposed to win. Hillary was supposed to win in 2016. We kind of know that because the Ukrainian Russia war was really slotted to kick off in 2017, and because Trump won, they had to put that on the back burner, at least formally.
I mean,
right?
I agree with that. But I mean, America's been on a war footing with Russia since 1999. So I mean, it's
we probably, yeah, sure.
That is true. That I understand. Okay.
So obviously, so we can go with the idea that Trump just beat Hillary and like whizzle wazzle chaos system ensures, or we can assume that there is probably people behind. Though I can't let go of the idea that whoever is on that podium at the voting, like whoever the two top picks are, have power behind them. I don't believe that you get there just because Hillary just wants to promote.
Well, why don't we simplify that and say, okay, is Trump acting alone, just the guy the media paints him to be, the blowhard who wants attention?
No.
Or is he a front for
not.
a powerful group that might be at war with other powerful groups?
It's both and neither. Okay, something you got to understand, and this might be difficult to discern for people outside of America, like physically. The fact that any of these media elites were saying that Hillary Clinton was a viable candidate in 2016, that's literally delusional. Like, this woman was the most hated political figure of her generation. Like, people in Milwaukee who went for Bernie, like, went for Trump over Hillary because they hate Hillary Clinton that much. Okay? So you're talking about some kind of breakdown within the deep state's ability to kind of select for executive office, like, who they want. Okay? Like, why that broke down is somewhat complicated and somewhat opaque. That's a different matter than, the split between the neocon element who wanted to slate basically all these who wanted to slate for annihilation all these foreign societies they identified as the enemies of Judea, as well as like the vestigial kind of like Anglo-Protestant elite types like Cheney, who are kind of like along for the ride, but also like getting rich off of the enterprise. Those guys are kind of getting their way no matter what. They don't really care who's in the White House. Like, for example, like Robert Gates was the actual president for about 12 years. Okay. Like, that's why, if you'll notice, it's very telling in that photo of the live feed from those SOCOM types when they killed bin Laden. Okay, you got Hillary Clinton like looking out of it with her hand over her mouth. You got Barack Obama sitting on the floor like pouting, looking like some little kid who's like, you know, bored with the lesson at school. You got Robert Gates sitting in the middle of everybody, literally arms crossed, looking intently at the screen. Like anybody just looking at that picture would be like, that guy's the president. Okay. Why the real question here is like why the deep state like went utterly berserk and kind of exhibited senility. It's like literally like insane senility over the ascendancy of Trump. The reason why they did that is the same reason they did over Nixon. Like it's not because like I mean Nixon was a great man and Trump is not, but Nixon wasn't this like right wing figure or like this, you know, this kind of more polished version of George Wallace. You know, he was basically a Rockefeller Republican who was a hawk on the Cold War, owing to a discreet geostrategic vision he had on how it could be won. However, what the deep state also realized in those days was that, thank you, you've got to be able to you've got to be able to finesse that tendency in order to diffuse it, and that's why that's why Reagan was essentially like one of the reasons Reagan was the great communicator. It's not just because, you know, he had this kind of across the aisle appeal. And could build a unique coalition around that. It's also because he it's also because, you know, the opposition basically tolerated him. Okay, there was about a third of the electorate that absolutely hated him, you know, and there was some bad blood there, but it never would have occurred to anybody to proceed against Reagan like the regime has, like the deep state has against Trump, or like they did against Nixon. And if people don't believe me, look at Iran-Contra. I've got a lot of sympathy for Ollie North and company, but what they did was incredibly illegal. Okay, like the fact that after some token indictments of North and Poindexter and a few other minor players, the deep state just kind of let it go, like tells you everything you need to know. Okay, which I'll just make one more point and then I'll shut up. But the point I was making about Precious Miss Anderson and his kind of shrill polemic, not only, I mean, his word choice was bizarre, but it's also, you can't go around saying that after you abolish electoral procedure to literally prevent a man from ascending to office based on a popular vote, you can't turn around and say he's trying to ruin our democracy. Right. It's like you can't declare that you're a bad person if you don't support a strategically pointless bloodbath in Ukraine that was totally avoidable. Like you can't do that and be taken seriously anymore. You know, you just can't. Okay. And the American government never was particularly good at finessing these kinds of things after about the 1970s, but it wasn't patently moronic. You know, I mean, and they're rapidly losing a leg to stand on with this bullshit. People are tired of it. Even people who have contempt for Trump. That's all I got.
I want to kick it over to Pete. No. Hey, Thomas, we invited you on the show to talk, so we want you to talk. The only thing I know Pete has a heart out. I don't know if everyone else does. We can go as long as as the conversation goes. I just want to make sure we get Pete's input here before he has to get out of here.
Oh no, I realized he was on a time limit. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So Pete, initial thoughts on that, and maybe we can dig into more of the idea of you know, team, we can say Team Lucifer, team, what was it, Mark? Team Lucifer, team.
Oh, it was the Luciferians versus the Malachians. I mean, that sounds a little very abstract, but I forget who I heard that was breaking it down. But if you look at it sort of as very esoteric, but sort of figure out if you're going to go down that conspiracy angle of like this is a spiritual war and these are people that are at least have a spirit behind what it is that they're pursuing. You sort of have the different groups, and on the Hillary deep state camp, you have your child sacrificing, blood drinking Satanists. And then in the Trump Elon camp, you have your sort of humanists who like capitalism, they like success, and they like human flourishing as long as they can get rich too. And they're sort of the lesser of two evils. They're not the most high. They're not it's not a Christian nationalist, but it's a generally successful vision for the world of peace and prosperity. And listen, how correct that is, I don't know, but it's an analysis that maps onto reality somewhat accurately. So I kind of
it's a distinction. It's basically friend or fed. It's useful when it's useful. It's not when it's not. Pete, ideas, thoughts?
I wanted to go back to Trump's basically origin. I want to go pre-1990. Growing up in New York City, I mean, I probably heard the name Trump for the first time in like 1979 or 1980. And it was clear that he was a player on the scene. He was always out getting his picture taken, but he was a real estate guy back then. And like before we started talking, we were talking about, the mob, the Italian mafia. And when all those RICO indictments and everything started coming out in the 80s, Trump, the focus over through the 80s of Trump was he would talk about real estate all the time. And all of a sudden, right around 90, 91, when pretty much, I'm assuming a lot of his contacts were either threatened or put away, you see this gradual transformation from Donald Trump, the real estate guy, to Donald Trump, the brand.
And yeah, and the media guy.
Yeah. And he's on, you see him, he does Oprah, he does Donahue, he's doing all these daytime TV shows. He's out there selling, then he starts selling his book and everything. And pretty much, I would say, probably by like 93 or 94, I knew that Trump was probably going to run for president one day. He made it clear in interviews that he would talk about it all the time. He'd talk about how the country needs to be run like a business. If we're going to protect people, if we're going to protect countries overseas, he was talking about NATO. He
went to Moscow too during that time. Yeah,
they should pay us for it. I mean, it was pretty obvious. And then it seems like they had talked about him running in, I think it was 96 and 2000. You had the Rage Against the Machine video that had like a Trump for president sign in it back then.
Oh
yeah. And
That's
and then it seemed like he just after 9/11 he just dropped out, got offered a TV deal and everything, and then he becomes basically the most famous man in the world at that point. I mean, on that TV show, people forget how incredibly popular that TV show was. And I just think it's very interesting watching how he went from real estate magnate, and then when I'm really convinced that a lot of what he was able to do as a real estate man was because of the mob. That he was friends with that. He just knew how to play every angle that needs to be played if you were going to be a real estate guy in New York City. And when those people just started getting thrown into jail, and when they had to basically stop doing what they were doing and go more into the background, it was just interesting to see how he basically changed. And he's always been that kind of slick guy. Even then, he always wanted to be in the spotlight. And then come into the 2010s, what bigger spotlight is there than to run for president of the United States? I mean, this guy has been about ego from the very beginning, from the very first time when I was a kid and I saw him on local TV in New York. And yeah, I mean, when he said he was running for president, it just wasn't a shock to me as somebody who had already been following him for almost 30 years up at that point. To that point,
yeah. Well, hadn't he been projecting it for a while too? I mean, I know he had sort of thrown around
the idea of
running, right?
Yeah, he said it in the 90s.
Even before he went to Moscow in 1988, he was corresponding with Nixon. He was corresponding with Nixon in the mid 80s. I also wanted to add too. Trump got Mike Tyson and Don King to sign an exclusive contract only to defend fractions of the undisputed title in Atlantic City and Trump casinos. That's nothing short of amazing. And like this, so Trump's just if Trump's supposedly this like to Pete's point, if Trump's supposedly like this dumbass or just like this like sleazy white dude, like you really Don King was literally a killer. Like he dropped bodies for the Cincinnati outfit or whatever whatever they call it there. And it's like, you tell me Trump can, you tell me like Mike Tyson didn't have people promising him the world if he'd, sign an exclusivity contract to defend, any of the three pieces of the undisputed title, like in their freaking casinos, like Trump got it done. I mean, this is not accidental. And Trump's not a stupid guy. Like, I mean, you can say he's crass or he's like a bad person, but his ascendancy is not accidental. And the Democrats are the ones who elected him, man. Like, if you short of like a convicted child molester, like, who couldn't defeat Hillary Clinton in a general? Like, this idea that like there's something comical about. I mean, like, it was impossible for Trump not to succeed considering what his enemies were doing, and like I said, it's not polemic. I don't have a whole hell of a lot invested in the electoral charade. I simply don't care that much. I'm telling you objectively, if you thought Hillary Clinton was a viable candidate, you were delusional. Like you just
okay. But let's dig into that. Okay, so how much of this is a charade? Because on one, what I'm hoping to get, one of the hopes from this stream is to, if nothing else, to kind of get the narratives into something that's operative for us, not for everyone else, just for us. Because I feel like there's a lot of competing narratives surrounding Donald Trump and this idea, like, was the vote before 2016 ever legitimate? Are they always just instilling candidates? Is it just an A/B choice, and it doesn't matter because whoever gets in is going to be part of the regime, and that's why Donald Trump was this dark horse? Or is Donald Trump simply part of the regime in terms of they were picking the most chaotic element to throw in there so they could get things like COVID through, they could get all these other things through, with basically a WMD sort of candidate. I feel like there's that synergy that's missing in let's say the dissident right narrative, that if we can't agree on that reality, we can't agree on anything. And it makes understanding that sort of factional divide with Trump, which I personally see it everywhere, that one of the biggest things that Donald Trump did in his presidency is start taking out pedophile
child traffickers.
Yeah. Epstein was just the front man for a huge other thing that he started taking out from everyone from where's my notes? Everyone from Brunel, who died in a prison in France. Wexner finally got named. Like, you just go down the list of all these people who started getting targeted, and that's, I don't know if that's because of Trump, but that happened during Trump. And we certainly, that's an attack against an opposing faction, which gets you look at Epstein.
It's more simple than you guys are making it, though. Like, again, if you want to understand the war on Trump, you've got to understand the war on Nixon. It's, you mobilize the silent majority. If they decide that you're their man, you've got 70 million like white Christian people angry at the government, mobilized around this one polarizing figure. The deep state utterly loses its mind. Okay, and they do everything in their power, legal, illegal, and everything else at their disposal, to destroy the man who represents that focal point. Like, that's all it is.
So sorry, Thomas, but what's their motivation for that? Why are they going after him? Just because of who he represents, or is there something more threatening there?
Why does the deep state now want 70 million angry right-wing white people? Really?
Well,
but it's not a matter.
They've already got them.
I was going to say, it's not a matter of whether they want them.
Hang on.
What are they scared that he will do on their behalf?
Hang on, we do have.
That's an open-ended question, isn't it? Like, it's not clear what they'll do. What happens when the deep state genuinely loses its legitimacy? Like, that's an open-ended question. I mean, you can say like, but no, that's obtuse for them to think that way, because obviously, this is America, and everybody respects the right of their fellow man, like, regardless of what his politics may be. But all I can tell you is, like, look what they did in Nixon, and look what is underway right now. Like, that Anderson Cooper bit was literally insane. And you got to look at the presidency too. The U.S. president is not a prime minister. basically like his role is his accountability is directly to the American people. He's the sole nationally elected representative, like ideally, or like according to the letter of the Constitution. His role is that of kind of the instantation of like American sovereignty. If you have a man who can take who has the gumption, the opportunity, and kind of the will and recklessness to take his cause to 70 million people and say, the deep state is not abiding the letter of the law. They're refusing to execute my orders as president of the United States. Like they are the ones who are in error, not I. What are we going to do to correct this? I mean, you've got a problem. Like they have a problem. I mean,
but I don't think it. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's. When it comes to Trump, I see it more as a call and response, and to see what the crowd likes. So it's not the case that Trump had some secret design or plan, and again, feel free to prove me wrong, that he had some secret design and plan to dismantle the deep state. It was that when he started talking about these sorts of things, there were a lot of people disaffected by the war on terror, disaffected by the change that started happening in 2014, where he started talking about ideas like BLM and the idea of of white privilege and political correctness in the 90s, blah 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 blah. It's more that sentiment existed in the population, and he took advantage of it. Again, I don't personally, I see him as just somebody like Pete was talking about, who's trying to reach the highest level of stardom and prestige and power that he can see. And this was just a path to it. And to the point, I want to jump back to the Hillary Clinton thing, and then we can circle around a little bit. But who did think Hillary Clinton was going to be was the right choice for a president? College educated urban elites. Those were the people who wanted Hillary Clinton, who loved Hillary Clinton, who put the bumper sticker on their Priuses and all those things.
I thought you mispronounced elitist.
But what you want and what's
let's welcome Mr. Dawson to the show here.
Welcome,
yeah, I have to disagree. Like Trump is a star chaser and a narcissist, but if you look at it, like he was against the Iraq War before he was all televised and getting attention for it. His principles were pretty consistent on the anti-war front, which was his biggest plus. Like as Reed Coverdale said, vote for me. I'm the funniest, and I might stop World War III. And that's how far we are in our own end zone, that we're like, yeah, this is the best guy, because look at the rest of them.
No, that's a fair point. Yeah, for sure.
Pete,
he was against immigration the whole time. He was against some of the things from the Federal Reserve. He used to speak about it on CNBC and stuff long before he was president. So he wasn't just putting it out there and seeing what the crowd reacts to. Like, he is the crowd. He's just like he told Epstein, I'm white trash with money.
Yeah. Well, look at the way he was going after like the Central Park 5, certain things like that, when it was not popular at all. So there are elements to him that haven't changed, but he is also a chameleon. Like Pete was saying, when he switched from the mobbed up developer, which you basically have to be mobbed up to be a developer anywhere, at least that I've ever been. And then when he saw that they were going down, he changed his business model to a licensing deal. It's like, I don't have to build the buildings. I can just sell my name and put my effort into being famous and license it. And then he went from that to TV. I mean, the guy's fluid, and he's able to transition to where the opening is and go after it. And I think he was watching politics for a long time with those sort of base instincts of kind of being onto the narrative, like knowing the media is full of shit, knowing they're pushing stuff that's anti that group that you were mentioning, Thomas, those 70 million white Christians, who I think he does have an authentic heart for. And kind of that, like, that's my main question anyways. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Does Trump care about the American heartland, or is this just the Trump show?
I mean, in some basic sense,
wait, sorry, Thomas. Let's kick this to Pete. Do you still have a hard out at 8, or are we keeping you around for a bit longer?
Yeah, I got to get out of here at 8.
Why don't you respond to that?
Yeah, does he appears to? I don't know how great an actor he is, but when you see him go to he goes to Pennsylvania when Biden doesn't, right. And you see him interacting with kids when he went down for it to Houston when the flood happened, and he went down there with Melania, and you watch him interact with normal people, And I just look at people's eyes when they do that, and he doesn't seem to. It doesn't look like he's acting. I mean, I don't think he's going to go out of his way to go hang out with some people at a burger joint, in friggin' Lake Jackson, Texas, or something like that. But when he does interact with those people, he is one of them. And I don't think that is acting. I think that is just something that he
authentically enjoys.
That's in him.
Yeah. He did a stunt in WWE or WWF at the time. He didn't need the money. He actually enjoys it. Like, he loves the people.
Yeah.
And
he wants to be
just as video proof. This is Trump sharing pizza. I believe this is after a rally.
Remember him? He's shooting the paper towel rolls and everything like that. Yeah. I mean, that's friggin' awesome, man.
Wow, he did it. So in a pizza commercial in the 80s, he ate it from the other end, right, to show the stuffed crust. Do you remember that? And he actually ate that backwards. So he really does eat it like that.
But I mean, he was shooting the paper towel rolls at that thing too. I mean, he just seems like wants to have fun wherever he goes, and he has his serious moments. And I mean, I would really have liked to have been a fly on the wall those first, I would say, 50 days he was in the White House, and he was getting together with all the advisors, and they were looking at getting rid of some regulations and putting some regulations into and signing the executive orders and everything. I'd have loved to have been a fly on the wall to see how much interaction he had with that. But a lot of the people that he got together to do that right in the beginning were competent people. Problem with Trump is he just friggin' fires people and gets rid of people so willy-nilly sometimes that my question is, and I mean, this is just, what would have happened if he just never got rid of Bannon? I mean, what would that presidency have looked like? And I know that a lot of the people that I know who are like conspiracy theory people who are like, I don't have a political ideology. I operate that everything is a conspiracy, and I go from there. I mean, imagine the kind of how they would have had to construct all of that in order for Trump to be like brought in as like some kind of brought in on purpose to do all of this, where you've heard, oh, well, they couldn't get away with doing if it would have been Hillary Clinton and the vaccines, no one would have there would have been all this pushback, but because it was Trump and everything like that, I don't know, man. The American people are pliable. I think 2020 proved that. I think anyone who appears as an authority figure, they just bow down to. But as far as Trump goes, I see him as genuine as a person. I mean, I just don't know how great of a leader he could have ever been even if he didn't come up against Russia, being a Russian agent, the whole Ukraine thing. But it would have been interesting to find out.
Pete, I know you got to get out of here. Always a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for coming on the stream.
All right, thanks. Take care, guys.
Wait. Do your thing. Pitch your show.
Pete Quinones show. Tune in on Monday because I think people are going to want to hear the episode that Thomas and I are going to drop. That one's going to be this Monday's episode. Will be the start of the Spanish Civil War series. And check out Substack, PeteSubstack.com.
Thank you, Pete.
Nice.
All right, thanks, guys. Take care. Talk to you later.
See you, Pete.
Yeah, so if I can sort of jump in there, I mean, I guess that brings up my question, because I don't think there's much of a question about Trump's authentic affection for the moral majority, whatever you want to call them, Americana. But then the question is, like, if you look at where okay, perfect example, we were watching the CNN town hall / debate, and it reminded me of 2016 Trump, and I was like, I would love to get that guy in office. And that was kind of my disappointment. If he could govern like he campaigns, again, you can say that about every politician, but if I could have Trump, the campaigner, in office, maybe it's a possibility in a second term where he's just going to go scorched earth. But is it a front, or was the deep state actually capable? The deep state, the Democrats, the media, everybody that sort of bombarded him with all the bullshit. Why didn't he just govern like the reputation he'd built for himself through his campaigning and the TV shows and things before that?
He wasn't capable of it, owing to a lack of will, which most men don't have. George H.W. Bush, we were talking about him before we went live. Whatever anybody thinks of him and his character and his politics, he did have the will to rule as a president. That's why I made the point during the LA riots, Bush declared a state of emergency and he deployed the U.S. Marine Infantry. Mm-hmm. Okay, which is exactly what Trump should have done during the BLM riots. Trump did have certain disadvantages. If you literally are surrounded by people under the Joint Chiefs who claim they don't have to obey the president's orders, you know, when you've got clowns in Silicon Valley declaring that they can censor the president's ability to communicate with the American people, like Trump should have. If you literally refuse to obey the president and you're in uniform, that's insubordination. You should be brought up on courts-martial charges. Okay, what Eisenhower would have done if some news agency said, you know, we're going to censor President Eisenhower, he would have had them arrested. Okay. Now, like when I tell people that, they say like, "Oh, well, that would be crazy." It's like, really, man? Like Silicon Valley and Twitter gets to decide like who the president communicate with? Like some one star at the Pentagon, he gets to decide like if he's going to obey the president's orders or not. Like what's crazy is people acting like the presidency is some ceremonial office, and if you don't like the president, you know, it's kind of conditional as to whether or not you're bound by executive orders. Right. And in order for things to change, Trump would have had to do what Reagan succeeded at and what Nixon tried to do. You'd really have to have a coterie already insinuated in key positions of executive authority that would make sure that, you know, Trump's orders were executed no matter what. And
that's it. Like, is it a failure of the whole of government if you don't have people in place to execute what you need to be executed in order to get your vision across? Right? If you say go, and they're like,
can we imagine what the media would have done though if he'd sent troops in to BLM?
What worse
the
than
whole
what they
press
did?
would have acted like he was a Hitler and
he was already Hitler
in the SS. Yeah, but it would have gone up to the millionth degree.
He wasn't the fascist they said he would be.
He wasn't Hitler. That's the problem.
No. The media can be as hysterical as it wants. Like when Orville Farbus said that, you know, there's no damn way that, you know, Arkansas schools are going to be integrated. I don't think this was a good move, but Eisenhower said, "Oh, really?" And he sent the U.S. Army. He said they're going to be integrated or they'll have you shot. I mean, you're the president, man. It's not what's CNN going to think. You're the president.
Well, Eisenhower is pre-death of Kennedy, and so the media wasn't run by a cabal at that point.
Well, I think the role of the media is or can't be understated in that license for the dissent for the dissent against Trump within the chain of command of the military, which Thomas, as you point out, is precisely something that should not be broken in any kind of stable country, or even in the way the Silicon Valley and the way the Silicon Valley types would react to it. The reality is, and this is something I think as more and more people have exited the corporate press ecosystem. And this is one of the reasons why when we listen to something like what Anderson Cooper said with the clip that we started the show with is like, what's this guy even saying? This sounds stupid. Well, because that's not for people who have exited the ecosystem. It's for the people who are still within the ecosystem. And that still accounts for millions of people who think that there is a two-party system and who think that there is law and order and that the Constitution provides a backstop against a guard of tyranny and all these sorts of things. And where what was interesting was precisely to see how small people in individual roles could disrupt something as serious as the president of the United States sending out a message to the people vis-a-vis Twitter, right? You know, and you saw that's like, oh, well, we decided we're actually more than him. We could get into the psychological reasons for that.
Yeah, it's absurd. People act like, you know, the president can't exercise expressly delegated powers under Article 2 because like people will get mad, or like, you know, the media would say he's a racist. Well, I mean, the fact we've been having this conversation and people approach it in those terms on both sides of the aisle, I mean, tells you that America is like not a serious country. It's like that's third world kind of stuff. You know, where you've got like a president where sometimes he's viewed as, you know, the sovereign authority. under the written constitution that he's purported to be. Like other times, he's just kind of like this figurehead. Other times, there's nothing at all. It kind of depends on the mood of the press and some plutocrats who, decide like what the tenor of content's going to be in the press. I mean, that's not the way first world countries function. And it
isn't it though? Like they ignored his orders in Syria, right? He told them to get the troops out, and they just lied to him about the numbers.
Yeah,
right? They sabotaged Michael Flynn before Trump was even officially in office, right? Like they went after him.
Great to see in his administration.
Yeah, not just Bannon, but Flynn.
And gloated about it after the fact.
But I mean,
that's
Trump
the most
it's his DIA report that showed that Hillary and Kerry were supporting the Salafist principality in Syria, essentially supporting ISIS.
Yeah,
right? That would have been huge.
100%.
Well, all of us know that, but most people don't. They just think, oh well, maybe there's some covert funding for him, kind of like the Contras in Iran-Contra or something. No, it's that whole thing was AstroTurf, and the whole thing's for Zionist interests.
No, 100%. I mean, what Trump should have done. I mean, I take your point that. I mean, I'm the first to admit Trump had profound disadvantages. What's the meaning of the bell?
Ding ding.
Somebody brought a bell. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, like you say, the one good thing about Trump is it did, sort of illustrate that the president gets to be the president when the people who run the country let him.
When he was a lame duck, when Netanyahu called Biden, the first head of state to call Biden, it was, it's the whole frog and the scorpion story. Why'd you think? Like, what you think he's going to do, you dope? When that happened, though, you saw, like, he fired Bolton. He fired a bunch of neocons. He brought in Doug McGregor. Like, he started doing what he should have done the first day, right? So I feel like if he gets a second shot, he's realized these people hate you, and it doesn't matter how much you give them. All they're going to give you in return is more demands. And, he was looking at it. He's like, I had gas prices down. I had this, and you guys have ruined everything. And so, I don't know. He needs to bring in better people. No more Boltons, no Haleys, none of that. If he continues to surround himself with neocons, every time he ever did anything right is when he didn't listen to anyone else. Right? All his advice, all the little weasels with snakes in his ears were giving him bad advice. And I think he's realizing now, like, the hell with these people. He had a pretty good admin his last month in office, or 20 days, whatever it was.
Well, it's also one of the things. It wasn't. I'll just let me insinuate real quick. Yeah. Nixon. Say whatever you want about. He opened himself up to gross exposure and liability by having guys like G. Gordon Liddy and the White House plumbers around him. Nixon was at least realistic that there was not going to be any kind of friendly coalition building, like to our friend's point here. That these people weren't operating on some good faith basis where it's like, well, let's do a little horse trading, and you're going to make some concessions to us on key policy issues, and we'll kind of give way and let the executive do his job. Like they not only was that not the case, they were looking for an opportunity. The sole impetus for their presence in the Nixon White House was to discover an opportunity to bring down that presidency, and that's exactly what was the case with Trump. Trump. Now, if Trump took his case to the American people and said what we said just now, would that get him his way in policy circles? No, but I mean, somebody needs to stop like a Biden convention in this way and pretend that there's some kind of like good faith, give and take underway that constitutes our system. That's all.
Here's a clip from Trump on Letterman. I think this is somewhere, since we brought up his switch from real estate mogul to potential political candidate. This is somewhere in the early 90s. But it's interesting to listen to this and just basically see how the messaging really hasn't changed that much. You changed Japan to China, and his foreign policy, or a lot of his talking points, have stayed the same since 92, wherever this was.
And what about are people trying to draft you to run for president up in New Hampshire?
Well, I guess a lot of people want to see this country. It's a shame what's happening. Japan, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, everybody's taking advantage of the United States. People know that if certain people are running a country, that it won't happen. I mean, when you look at Japan not paying for the defense, we're defending Japan. We're losing billions and billions of dollars. We're fighting for AIDS help and for farmers and for this and that. And it's a shame. And the Japanese folks, who I respect greatly, but they're not treating us fairly. They're really not treating us fairly. Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, they're not paying us anything for the services we're rendering, and I think it's a disgrace. And I think people look at certain people, and maybe me, if I were in a position, this country, believe me, would not be ripped off like it is, and it is just being ripped off so badly by our so-called allies.
Yeah. So that's a pretty strong statement. So now, are you saying?
I don't think it's strong. I think it's fair. And by the way, I have tremendous respect for the Japanese. I do a lot of business with the Japanese, and they smile about it too. They know it. The country is losing billions and billions of dollars to Japan, and we can't afford to lose, and it's a shame.
But so now, are you saying this by way of indicating that you could do it better, and you do intend to run for president at some point?
No, I'm not going to run for president, but I think somebody.
Now, in 8 years, if you came back, would you have a different answer? In 4 years,
I tend to doubt it. I really tend to
26
doubt it.
years.
But I just think that there's so many ways that this country can straighten itself out, and we're not going about those ways. Cutting farm aid is not the appropriate thing. Cutting help for the homeless and help for the poor and welfare. Certain things can be done that really will mean big dollars to this country. And those things are not being done right now.
So can I jump in there? Because that brought a question to my mind. I remember there's that clip. There's tons of clips. I remember Oprah. The whole media was behind Trump and saying, why won't you run? Why won't you run? It was the pro-America, like I mentioned before, success, wealth, everybody does good. Well, what is it about Trump that made them, I guess, Thomas, you had addressed this before, is that he represents white Christians, the Bible Belt, the Middle America. Why do his enemies see the success of the people Trump is for as a threat to them? Why can't it be for both?
This is a huge topic. Okay, you've got to understand the entire 20th century. Okay, you got to understand like the New Deal regime onward and its disposition towards questions of race and the Constitution, literally not the U.S. Constitution. I mean, like what constitutes the body politic, and ultimately how that relates to a global vision of governance. Okay, and the revolt against that was really what became the Wallace Coalition. Okay, which became the Nixon Coalition, which became the Reagan Coalition. A self-consciously white voting bloc that again constitutes tens of millions of people is not manageable. Okay, it's not. Especially when you consider that again, for close to a century, the regime as it exists has been really oriented towards a kind of social engineering that's entirely punitive. Okay, not just to white people. I mean, to everybody except for those who are kind of within its favor, like owing to owing to certain nuances of ideology, but also owing to just kind of like the identity of those who constitute the majority of its powerful actors. But even people who don't have a sophisticated view of politics and historical developments, particularly like in the historical moment, they at some point they push back, okay, and they realize that they're being uniquely impacted by these hostile measures that seem to be increasingly increasingly outlandish and increasingly tailored to impose direct and naked harm. These things can't be rationalized anymore as just the need to sacrifice certain sociological preferences in order to combat the worst alternative of communism, or in order to shore up America's image in the world, so that we're not mired in constant bloodbaths like Vietnam, because we need to come to terms with the colored world, who are the majority of this planet. Okay, that's no longer an alibi, because that doesn't reflect extant conditions anymore. But one thing that white nationalist types are right about is that this regime is nakedly anti-white. It's against all like spontaneously occurring like precedented identities. It's anti-faith. It's grotesque. Okay, its objective is to render people to the status of slaves in a very real capacity, spiritual, physical.
Let me just jump in there quickly, Thomas. I know David Gronowski, who had on the show before, has made the distinction. He's like, it's actually a war on differentiation. So
absolutely,
everything that is that creates all sorts,
Yep.
in a sense, borders of words, concepts, ideas, whatever. That's the war. That's the more metaphysical, spiritual war aspect of this. Is that
100%?
And we've seen this. We saw this happen in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, and exactly. And
you know why?
What's that?
You know why? Oh, like as the Unabomber said, differentiation means there's potential for a superior inferior, and that's part 100%. Of leftist psychology is being completely
actually, Ryan,
insanely afraid of that. And as far as like why they all turn on Trump, like Oprah and all these people loved him, and then they didn't look. There was a time in the media when they loved Trump. After he was president, that was after he sent cruise missiles into Syria. When he did that, he spread subsonic over 10 targets, so they had no chance of actually hitting anything. But he did this, and then all of a sudden they're like, I think Trump is presidential. Trump's become presidential. They all loved him when he went after Syria. And then, when, a month later, he pulls out all CIA support for Al-Qaeda fronts and basically withdraws from Syria, and they turned on him again. We know who decides whether they love him or hate him and why.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And
everybody knows.
Just to conclude really quick.
Just from audio videos, I'm playing clips from on mute is from Morning Joe, where what's her nuts is basically just fawning over Trump, and this is just before the election. Yeah. Sorry, Thomas, go ahead.
No, Dar al-Islam is targeted for annihilation by America too. Okay, it's not just white people, but obviously, in America, it's white Christians who are most directly impacted deliberately and most punitively by this social engineering regime. I mean, for obvious reasons. Okay, that's not to say that it's the regime somehow friendly to like non-white people who also wish to live lives according to reason and according to their own cultural and sociological preferences.
So I mean, I think everyone sort of understands what we mean by that. Obviously, there seems to be the coalition of the protected groups against the threatening so-called majority at least in Western countries, global minority.
Well, because the press has to drag it into identitarian politics, because you can't attack Trump on being anti-war. The bulk of the population is with him on that, right? You can't attack him on the issues. Like, why shouldn't we have better trade deals? Why shouldn't we stop illegal immigration? Like, so you have to be like, oh, you don't like immigrants? It's because you hate the Mexican. You hate race. They have to make it about race. Oh, you're not doing everything for, this country or that, or you're Islamophobic, or, you had a Muslim ban, the don't say gay veil or whatever. Like, all these things, like, it's not what that was. But they're going to label it in an identitarian nonsense because they're like, oh, you're going against civil liberties? I'm against that. I've been taught that since I was 3.
Right.
Racism bad.
Yeah, and they have to do that because the egalitarian policies don't work, because there is difference, there is hierarchy, there is bell curve distributions in terms of in terms of aptitude and all these sorts of things. And so when you're trying to hold on to a sense of power and when you're trying to have a certain set of ideas be the center of society, and a certain set of policies that reward the welfare state and all these New Deal, blah 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 blah. How else can you combat that? Well, by saying that everybody's racist, and that's and that's part of it.
Yeah, clearly. Go ahead.
At some point, it doesn't have a context anymore. I mean, it never really did, but during the Cold War, it did. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at. And it's also the left. They don't have any moral credibility. Like the man just said, if your policy is you want to indefinitely assault other countries for no really strategically rational reason, and the only kind of consistent foreign policy activity is unprovoked military violence and unconditional support for this like apartheid state in Israel, you can't go around saying like other people are bad people. Like, I'm not saying that's particularly got legs to stand on anyway, but it's kind of like nakedly it's kind of nakedly incoherent in moral terms.
Mm-hmm. Well, since you hang on, wait, stop. First, okay, open question: does anyone have a heart out? I want to respect everyone's time. I can also do 5 hours on this. So
I got about 30 minutes ish.
Okay, that works for me.
Before 9 o'clock.
Thomas, Ryan?
It's morning here, but
I mean, just it's
30 minutes.
I'll let you guys. I'll let you guys know, and I'm gonna give me like 5 minutes, and I'll come back if that's okay. I got rheumatoid issues. It would help if I could stretch my legs a bit.
100%. I mean, like I said, these streams can have tend to gone long. So
oh my god, they could go forever.
They have. I've been on a few.
No.
Just ask me about 9/11.
Yeah. Hey, let's do it.
Hang on,
like
because I have you here, Thomas. Because I have you, Ryan. So
I want to hear both of you on 9/11.
I mean, you guys probably have a lot more to add than I do, but yeah, I'll be back momentarily, fellas. Thanks.
We need to talk about 9/11. We need to talk about Epstein. And I
was kidding, but yeah, all right. I'm actually doing Epstein on Red Ice Thursday and another 9/11 segment on Fresh and Fit on Friday.
I just finished watching you on Fit and Fitness.
Fresh and
doing
Fit.
That whole breakdown, and that's kind of what I started off the streams saying that Thomas's and Peter's series on the Cold War kind of started solidifying this idea that I already had in my mind more as a theory. It was more of a thing you say, but you don't really know. And you kind of get the sense that there are these factions in government that, and I don't want to make it into a false dichotomy of like, what was it said on, it was a, shit. You don't
want to make a false dichotomy.
Yeah, it was a false dichotomy, but you're on 10th Planet. Shit.
With Eddie Bravo.
Eddie Bravo said, "No, team Demon, Team Freedom." Right?
Yeah.
We can make whatever distinction you want, friend or fed, whatever dichotomy you want, but certainly there seems to be two distinct power groups forming. And Trump seems to be on one side, and Epstein and many of his ilk seem to be on the other. So since we have you here,
yeah,
Ryan,
they hate Trump because he was in the club and he got out, and so he knows. They know that he knows their secrets. Yeah.
So, well, Ryan, would you agree that would you agree that they're also worried that he might actually say something about it too?
Well, everyone in that Epstein circle that got arrested during his presidency.
Exactly.
Right. So Jean-Luc Brunel and Peter Nygaard and Epstein and Maxwell all got jailed while Trump was president, and nothing since.
But was Trump in that group, or was he just aware of it?
They were targeting him to try to make him part of that group, and he had a real estate dispute against Les Wexner from Mar-a-Lago. So they had a personal beef, and then he's married. His family, his daughter, married into the Kushner billionaires, and they're a bunch of weasels too, but they are a different cartel. And Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, and Jared Kushner were real estate rival, or Charles Kushner, excuse me, in New York. And then Epstein's team had Ehud Barat, and Trump's more of a Netanyahu guy. So it's kind of like left wing versus right wing Zionism, where you have the Kushners and Netanyahu and Trump on one side, and Ehud Barak and Epstein and Wexner on the other side. But at least the Netanyahu camp had a line. They're like, "Hey, no raping kids."
Right. Puts them on the good. That's why I can't break it down into a dichotomy. It's at least 3, possibly 4, and we got our pick of which Zionists we want. Well,
look, most people are against pedophilia. Like even Zionists, right? They're like, "Hey, come on." Even the mafia is like, "Nah, don't fuck with children, man." But the Israeli state, they have their own intelligence outfit, just like the United States does. I mean, the CIA counterintelligence acts on its own. So does the DEA. Like a lot of these, what you would call the deep state, they're doing what they're doing since the OSS times, right? Sometimes the president's not even aware until it's too late. And Mossad, they're doing the same kind of things. They work with. You can really think of it. It's not even like the United States, Israel, or Saudi Arabia. There's a nexus of intelligence group of shared information, and they started building bridges and things like that when they created things like the Safari Group initially to mess with Africa, but it morphed into this intelligence sharing nexus. And they need they, meaning the CIA, rely heavily on the Israelis and the Saudis to infiltrate Arabic speaking terror cells. They don't have enough people in the linguistic department. They don't have enough bilingual speakers. You can see how bad it was if you listen to someone like Sibel Edmonds, was translating. She speaks Farsi, Turkish, and Azerbaijani, and English. And she's in the FBI field office in Washington, D.C., which is a big one. And they had like 3 Turkish speakers and none for there was like 2 for Iran, and one of them was faking it, could only sort of speak Farsi. Like they didn't have enough Arabic speakers. It was so bad in the 90s that, like, think about it. There was a box after the Amir Khan assassination, a box of documents that they left in plain Arabic, not even in code, that nobody even read, and ended up culminating in the World Trade Center bombing in 1993. And they literally were sitting on the plans. Wow. Nobody could read them. So this is how much they outsource to the Israelis, which gives them a huge advantage to just lie to our faces, which they do all the time.
Yeah. So can Trump, does Trump have any legs on his own, or is he completely dependent on being part of at least one of, like, even if it's the right-wing Zionist faction? Do the American people and Trump have a chance as their own coalition, or is it always going to be dependent on AIPAC?
He had like no one to hire. If you think about it, like, always surround himself with bad people. How many good people can you name? You know, it's like, oh, Ron Paul, Massey. There aren't a lot. He went with the military, so he was, the Rex Tillerson and the Mad Dog Mattis. So he didn't really have a faction to pluck from.
Yeah, and
if you think about it, like the neocons are everywhere.
Like, what about even
both
Flynn?
parties? It's all the 3-letter networks. Yeah, well, he did pick Flynn, and look what happened, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Like, before he was even sworn in, they were after him.
Yeah.
He was the head of the DIA. That's not nothing, but it's
But is he competent?
Probably one of the biggest players he had, and they took him out before he was even sworn in.
Yeah. No, but
and then he got surrounded by Zionist neocons, right? He was all his advisors was just like, it might as well have been PNAC. It was so bad, right? And he just feels Thomas, like, well, that's how you win.
Thomas, before you jump in, let me just read out some super chats. This is from Mark Themi. Jason, glad you finally got a right-wing Hegelian on the show. Well, I think that's for you, Thomas. Thank you very much. For $5 and for $10, Trey 50 Daniel says Trump had the will of his people, but he never had the true consensus which he was aiming to achieve. That was his fatal flaw and his biggest strength. We're just a quick reminder, anyone watching us on Rumble, you can always send us your super chats and have your comments and ideas read out on the stream.
Rumble rants.
Rants. Sorry, rants.
Rumble rants. Little dollar sign in the bottom left-hand corner. But I think one thing we're circling around, and I think Trey's comment points to it as well, is, he had the will of his people, he had the will perhaps of the people, but again, not the educated. And Ryan, you were just pointing to that as well. So not the people who are already primed, positioned, and ready to work within the halls of government. And so precisely because Trump coming from perhaps we might say Trump coming from the business background, just having more of just to use a rhetorical term, like a common sense approach to things, just the way that people kind of intuit and be like, well, this doesn't seem fair. Those kinds of people aren't going anywhere near Washington, D.C. because they want to run away from it, naturally speaking. Mm-hmm. Right. And so who do you actually, and that's one of the
people with actual intelligence and talent are in the business world. People with no intelligence or talent who are just parasites, they work in government their whole lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're looking for government professionals, he should have brought in, no one wants to quit their business to go into politics. They make a lot more money with a successful business than they are going to be an advisor to whoever, whatever.
And when you add on,
so like our most talented people are gobbled up.
Right. And when you add on the demonization from the media, now suddenly it's so toxic. Mm-hmm. Why would you even take that risk? I mean, how many quiet business owners out there who loved Trump, who liked the fact that he was willing to drill, baby, drill, but they wouldn't voice support for him publicly, or maybe take that next step to say, hey, I'm willing to try and help out, or I'm willing to run for this office. It's too much it's too much for people to sacrifice.
Well, what do you think of sorry, Thomas, I'll throw this over to you in a second. What do you think of this statement or this idea? Is that the system has been selecting for corruption for so long now that the competency has been basically bred out. And in the business world, high level, you don't want highly corrupt people in positions of power in general, because that usually means that they're not trustworthy, and you kind of need trustworthy people to run things like your CEO or high level management. So now that we have the situation in Western government, I'll just talk about the West in general. I mean, I grew up in Canada, I'm living now in Australia. You see the same rot everywhere you go. Is that the corruption now has gotten to such a degree that they've forced out they've stopped trying to corrupt competent people and have just started to position highly corrupt people to positions of power. Joe Biden is the best example of that. He's a poster boy of corruption. And I mean, Kamala Harris
and nothing else. It's the degradation of our elites, right?
Right. Don't make
at
me
least our political class.
But so Thomas, so now that we're in a position now where it seems to me, anyways, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone, that the corrupt have the only people who have any power or leverages of power are highly corrupt, and that's almost the opposite of what you actually want to have a functioning government. That's kind of what Trump's left with. So now that he's been inside of it, I'm kind of questioning why he wants to get back inside, because it's not like it's going to change anything.
It's beyond ordinary corruption. And I make this point again and again, and nor is the private sector particularly better. I'm not talking about small business owners. I'm talking about people in Fortune 500 companies. There's not a clear cleft between, private capital and public administration. Like Sam Francis was making that point. He's right. The U.S. government, as it exists now, is totally obsolete. Okay, like regardless of whether your feelings on government generally, like government qua government. The U.S. government is basically structured to fight the Cold War and not really do anything else. Okay, that's why I said there's an ethno-sectarian reason for the war against Russia, but it's also like the only war it can currently provoke. Okay, because the regime has nothing to do. It has no raison d'etre. Okay, after the polio vaccine and after things like syphilis became manageable, the public health bureaucracy had literally nothing to do. Okay, the government's not just going to pack up and put itself out of business. Okay, so the people are attracted to that. I mean, yeah, I agree with you guys that even in the best of circumstances, you're not going to really find the best men, foregoing, a lucrative career on Wall Street to go work for the State Department. But there's guys who would do that, when the State Department actually had like a clear mission orientation that was rationally coherent. Like what is it now? Like you got the U.S. military is occupying half the planet in some like World War II style forward deployment. Like you got like what are these idiots like Anderson Cooper or Joe Biden? Whether you're talking about the private sector or the executive, when they talk about democracy, what does that even mean? Like that's Cold War speak. Like democracy means not the Soviet Union and the East Bloc. It means us, not them. Like what is there a monarchy somewhere I don't know about, or like is the Soviet Union secretly still here? Like what is not democracy? I mean,
Putin's a dictator.
It sounds
right?
like I'm being obtuse, but it's like, what's that?
I said Putin's a dictator, right?
2020.
As opposed to what, like Senator for Life, now President Joe Biden. Like I mean, even if he was a quote unquote dictator, it's like there's not an infinite number of ways you can figure the modern state. And it's basically post 89. I mean, ironically, one of the major outliers is the People's Republic of China, which is just a very strange government. Like it's not particularly communistic in the Marxist-Leninist sense, but it's certainly not like a free society, and it's not like Chinese. Normal by the standards of the rest of the developed world. Like these terms don't even make any sense. Like it's aside from the fact that they're dishonestly invoked for ideological purposes. But I think this is important, because it's the entire regime, aside from its ideological priorities, it's a solution. It's a solution in search of a problem that rationalizes its continued existence, and it's perpetually coming up short. That's all I want to do insinuate.
I think there's
to steal from Bernie Sanders, it's democratic anarchy.
Exactly.
Well, there is a book.
I'm gonna be back in 1 minute, guys.
There is a book that I want to cover eventually, and I don't know. I mean, I'm the Orthodox Christian in the room, but this is Nihilism: The Roots of Revolution of the Modern Age by Father Seraphim Rose. One of the things he points out, one of the things he predicts, I think fairly accurately, and this is written in the 1970s. His term for this coming age is an age of anarchism, and I don't mean in a more political sense, but it's that sense of there being no bottom, where nihilism finally takes hold formally within the body politic, and it starts being reflected not just in philosophy or in sort of high-minded sectors, but in culture itself. So the rot becomes where there is no bottom, because there is no top, there is no bottom. And I think this is where we're kind of in that circling the drain moment. It is an apocalypse for Western civilization. I said this to a friend of mine probably back in 2000. I don't know, 2018 or something like that, in the before times, somewhere in the before times. It was that I said Western civilization is over. The Western civilization, we understand it as is, which you would have studied in high school Western Civ class, is finished. That's kaput. What is taking place? What is its successor? We have yet to figure out. And I think that's kind of where we're at. We're all downstream from a war of the elites. That's becoming
kind of moved. Western Civ, like they practice Western Civ better in Japan than they do in the classical quote unquote West.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Like it still exists. It's just not in the West anymore.
Well, but
it's the Western Civ died in the West
too.
Well, y'all have pregnant men and male tampons. It's over. Okay, that's my nihilism.
but even in like a place like Japan, there's even like changing culture within like the corporate structures as well, of like trying to be I do business in Japan, so they talk about how like the young people don't want to work as long, and they're you have to be nicer to them. You don't get to just make them do whatever not even making them do what you want, but expect them to work long hours and the sorts of things that we're so admirable about. And
they want service sangyo. It's like, oh, how come you didn't volunteer 8 hours for free? I mean, that's fine. I'm okay with that shift because they were overworked before. But
yeah,
it's look, they still have a free market system, and they pretty good social values, and all the stuff the West wants. And look, it doesn't have to be tied to religion. People always say like white Christian, this and that. I'm like, yeah, it can be, but I mean, look at Japan. They're not religious. It's 80% atheists. It's a perfectly functional society. It's like you're not deriving your morals from religion. You're deriving your morals from basic reason and empathy, which are just innate human characteristics.
The way that Christians and Muslims think of it. That's an important qualifier. They believe in all kinds of things.
They don't believe in supernatural explanations for stuff.
They don't?
No. 80% of them don't.
Okay,
the ones that are religious, it's
those
like
80% must not be going to those Shinto temples then.
Yeah, they have Shinto temples. Just like you have a birthday cake. You don't really believe in wishing.
Rational analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we I don't know if we want to.
And what's religion qua religion? I mean, like I don't.
We can get into
Japan's about
the belief that you're going to live forever in another land called heaven, or anything supernatural.
That's just like that's something like lame autistic people on the internet claim is religion. I'm talking about the real world.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what's the difference between religion and philosophy? Is the belief in the supernatural?
No,
it's about metaphysics.
Philosophy is the counter melody to religion.
It's not even just metaphysics. It is literally the traditional form, right? Religion is essentially. I'll talk secular to you about for a second. Like, let's take all the magic claims out of it. If we just look at the only way to encapsulate a culture and move it forward, you need a hierarchy. And for a hierarchy to exist, you need something that is beyond the material. You need something that is beyond even you, because the king, whoever leads, whoever the top of this hierarchy is in any social sense, has to have something above that in order for there to be a sort of, let's say, a divine source or a meta history to continue it. Otherwise, it's always incumbent upon you. History dies with you. If history dies with you, if your entire culture lives and dies with you, then it's not a culture. It's just simply an expression of personal statements.
That's your belief. You can have a hierarchy without having divine entities.
I don't.
You could have it based on merit. This person gets to be the captain of the boat because he knows what he's doing, and I don't.
Where does merit come from?
Well, it depends on what activity you're doing, but experience and it depends on what you're doing.
Where does your?
But that is something.
I don't.
You know where it comes from. The same. Look, like
no, you don't.
When you get on an airplane, the pilot is the pilot because that's the person that's practiced flying and studying and doing that activity the most. You don't just vote on who gets to fly the plane, and he's not divinely picked by God to fly the plane. He's the pilot because he's trained flying planes, right? Whatever the person that's the hierarchy in a business or whatever is the boss because they know what they're doing. Sure. That's why we have accreditation systems in universities and stuff. We don't just like let anybody be an architect or whatever. But you shouldn't just let anybody be a king either and be like, well, he has royal blood, so his son must be the best ruler. Like, we got rid of those ideas. We got rid of hierarchy based on divine rule because that's retarded.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, Leonid Brezhnev is the boss because he passed all the tests. Same with Fidel Castro. Like everybody who doesn't believe that, it's just like some religious faggot because they took the right test.
Well, Castro took power by force.
Oh, even better. He's got to get more merit then.
All right.
The boss. He passed all the right tests. And he pointed a gun at your head. So he's the super boss.
May he burn in hell.
Yeah.
I am all down for religious arguments. I just feel this is not the stream to do it. We can
so
everyone for it if we want.
So let me throw a wrench in the gears here since we're going off the rails anyways. Something I've been thinking is if Trump, whatever his intentions are, he seems to be somewhat impotent. The cause of that impotence could be, discussed, debated. Him versus where I look at it, what disappointed me was COVID. As someone with still very strong libertarian leanings, I don't like being locked in my house. I don't like being force fed anything. And he not only seemed to be a proponent of it, we have clips of Trump still today attacking DeSantis because DeSantis fucked up by not locking down hard enough. Trump is still pushing and bragging about the vaccine. And then you have someone who just entered the race, being RFK, who, he's running as a Democrat, 60s Democrat, whatever, or reminiscent of that, at least in some way, maybe the sane left, whatever you want to call it.
A 60s Democrat, so Republican.
Yeah, well, today, yeah, right? Yeah. So, Trump versus RFK. Is there a difference?
On vaccines, there are, but at least Trump didn't do the mandates. And the lockdowns, he didn't do them, but he agreed with them. The governors did them, right? But he also allowed, though, if your governors, like Wisconsin and then later Florida, Tennessee said, we're not doing this, and they didn't have to do it. So he at least allowed states' rights, which I'm more a proponent for states' rights than it doesn't matter what the president thinks personally if he's going to allow the states to decide, which is what he did. It's what he should have done, too. Just wish the states had decided not to do mandates, well, it's politically, it's the correct thing. But I think that is a state decision. And so he allowed it. He didn't try to do a overarching mandate like Biden did, where you have to come in. You can't travel unless you do. You'll get fired unless you do. All government employees had to get vaccinated or they lost their jobs. The mandates were worse.
Who mentioned recently, Thomas, I'm going to kick this to you in a second, but who mentioned recently that, Florida is basically, their entire economy is based on
tourism.
On tourism. So the lockdowns in Florida would have been literally disaster. It would have bankrupted the state in 6 months, kind of thing. I think with all of these things, you deal with the media presentation of things, and then you have to deal with the actual meta mechanics of things. And when you get into the meta mechanics, you're like, oh, okay, well, yes, it's still a ballsy thing for him to do. At the same time, it's like, well,
you're talking about DeSantis?
DeSantis, yeah, his choices were relatively limited.
Yeah, but there were a lot of places. There were a lot of places that rely on tourism that locked down.
Well, so most people know.
Yeah, but not as much as Florida, though.
Most people know a couple of things reasonably well, and everything else they assume, in the case of a pilot flying a plane, that somebody knows what they're doing, right? So what you see in the advent of for whatever else you might want to say about it, when you see that suddenly there's this virus and people are getting sick and it looks like it might be dangerous. Well, what did DeSantis do? DeSantis acted his incentive. As a state that was largely dependent on tourism, he went and he looked for expertise that helped, that challenged what was going on at the federal level, right? And so you could say he was just acting out of pure incentive. Turns out he made the right call. I think we would agree with that here. But I think you also see where, and you saw this with Trump teaming up with the military, which was brought up here before as well, where it's that deferment towards expertise, which, going back to what we were talking about in the business world, when you're dealing with largely competent people, is a very good, is generally speaking a good rule of thumb. But then when you get into a situation like, pointing out like the public health system and the idea that these people had to, have to make themselves useful, as it were, is you had a lot of people who weren't actually that competent, who didn't really have a strong sense of who were either covering up for, research that they were doing in the case of Fauci, or in other cases were just basically trying to take the maximal safety approach, which that's like the other part of egalitarianism, is like maximal safety for modern leftism. It's like it's the pathology of safety, that everything must be made safe in the most in the most extreme sense of that word that we see. And I think that is a failure of Trump. But again, to the point, so what if he had taken a strong federal approach to it? Well, he would have been lambasted, right? And so then he has all these people in the government, people in the private sector coming to him and say, Mr. President, you can be the man that saves everybody in this thing. And that turned into Operation Warp Speed.
Yeah, but he was pushing Warp Speed, pushing everything, and they were still accusing him of telling people to drink bleach. So what would defer to the experts, and he's going to Birx and Fauci when he could have gone to RFK. I mean, this reminds me of the clip of him when he talks about
Bhattacharya.
When he talks about he was gonna set up a vaccine task force, and he went to RFK. RFK said do it. Then he went to Bill Gates and asked his opinion and took that advice.
Well, precisely.
So is he just completely incompetent, or like? And when it comes to something as important as that, can you put your faith in someone who's that much of a fuck up in the most important, when it comes to the crunch? Like, this is my problem with him, is like, I'd love to be able to put my support behind the guy, but when you've shown me that you can't be trusted in a crunch, I have a hard time putting you on my team.
Thomas?
I mean, the government wasn't really serious about it anyway. I mean, a genuine national emergency, I mean, the precedent for that, I mean, really goes back to Jefferson declaring a de facto state of emergency when Aaron Burr was attempting to raise an army and secede. But if COVID truly was this deadly epidemic that was a threat, not just to national security, but the actual physical constitution of the country, I mean, it was imperative for the president to declare a national emergency, as Roosevelt did, as Wilson did, as Lincoln did. He didn't do that. Congress's role, which this has never been challenged in court, the National Emergencies Act says that Congress has this oversight power. It doesn't claim what the remedy is, but this was passed post-Watergate when people were all about, trying to, in token ways, kind of limit the power of the executive through legislation and the power of the pen. But I mean, it's like I was thinking at the time, like, what is it? Aside from the merit or lack thereof of Fauci, who's obviously a crank, and CDC, it's like, so there's this deadly pandemic, but we're just kind of going to let the states handle it how they see fit. I mean, that's not that's not how you handle emergency situations. I mean, it's just not, structurally or in common sense terms. I mean, I agree with you, but to me, Trump showed that he didn't have the will for the role when he allowed that fool in Seattle say that the National Guard is, quote, not welcome on the ground. Really? I'm the president. Right. maybe I'll send the U.S. Army to fucking arrest your ass. It's not,
Well, there was a flip, right?
That's my opinion. Sorry, but my opinion
there was a flip
what he should have done is, as the federal government said, if you lock your states down, then I'm standing in, I'm going to fight that with the power of the federal government.
I mean, yeah, that's sure. I mean, that's that too. But this idea,
well, if you go back,
Ryan,
if you go back, at first it was the left that was they reversed roles, because Trump wanted to close the border and no immigrants from China, and they were calling it China virus and stuff. And the media was like, that's racist, xenophobic. And out in California, they had a Hug a Chinese Day. Where they remember this, like, so you got this disease that no one really knows about, and you're going to go to Chinatown and have everybody hug each other to prove you're not racist, which would just spread the disease, right? Like, they lost their mind. So like nobody was thinking in terms of like medically, like what's actually the safest thing to do. It was just a way to pontificate about identity politics again. It's like, so even like, let's say COVID was as deadly as they pretended it was. That would have wiped us all out because we did everything wrong, right? They should have closed the borders. They should have, if it had really been like smallpox of the 1800s or something, right? It wasn't, but like they didn't know in the beginning, and so but they just left the borders open, and they're hugging Chinese people.
No, we didn't wear masks when it was the most virulent. We closed down the businesses and left the border open, and everybody flipped on everything, right? Like
everyone did that. The UK, masks. They're like, oh, we only have 100 cases. We're like, how many cases would you like to have before you shut the border, right? Well, we can't do that.
Let's wait till we know it's here for sure. Then we'll close the border. But then they flipped on the vaccine too.
But like regardless,
right? 2020.
I mean, no, like 100%. But it's also a policy's got to be uniform in an emergency situation. You know, like it's like saying like it'd be like if Lincoln said, you know, after declaring a formal emergency, saying like, you know, we're gonna mobilize like, you know, military aged men, and if the states want to do it, they can. But like if they don't think that's a great idea, they don't have to. I mean, I realize that's like an obtuse example, but it's like categorically an emergency condition, you know, is the opposite of diverse remedy. You know, I mean, like there can be only one remedy. You know, that's basically at the end of the day, that's really the only reason you have a president. And according to like the letter of the Constitution, you know, in like formal legal terms, you know, because like he's the only single actor who can do that. So yeah, the whole thing was insane. And yeah, I mean, to your guys' point, it's you know, where which was it? You know, it's you're telling me you're gonna like leave the border wide open, but tell people to stay in their house. I mean, that yeah, obviously,
right. You can't travel, but we're gonna have illegal migrants coming up from the Mexican border all the time.
Yeah,
it just showed there was no consistency. They never really believed it. They're like, you have to wear a mask into a restaurant, but you can take it off when you sit at the table. Like there was no science involved, right? It was just
ritual. That's why I'll invoke RFK again. I just saw a clip of him today when he was talking about Event 201 from there forward, how the CIA ran the entire thing. And you could tell from what the actions they were instituting, he was saying Event 201 had nothing to do with pandemic. What it had to do with was solidifying how to invoke top-down control through the health regulators.
Well, it was a real estate grab too, because you depreciated all these commercial properties because they physically were not allowed to open. And then BlackRock and Vanguard and others come in and swoop up and buy everything for pennies on the dollar. And then suddenly it's reopened and now you're allowed to do business again. Like a huge transfer of wealth.
Well, and
you could go down New York and just like everything was closed. It was just all empty windows all the way down. They weren't allowed to open. They were freaking out. Then it was like, you can open, but they have to sit outside and be in a plastic bubble. It was ridiculous. And people complied. They have absolutely no information on it because the counter to the COVID hysteria was equally hysterical with your Stu Peterson crowd and talking about virus denial and other, 5G and some other retarded crap. But they allowed that out there, right? They didn't allow RFK Jr.'s voice, right? They censored all those people, but they let the Alex Jones-ish types say anything they want, right? And so it seemed like, well, if you oppose the irrationality of the, I wear a mask here but not here, or closing businesses at night, which they did. So, Corona, it only comes out after 8 o'clock. Like that's not scientific at all. They did all these ridiculous policies that anybody could say, that's stupid, but everyone goes, yeah, but we have to because they're authoritarian. Like, yeah, that they could sit someone down one-on-one and say, if you're wearing a mask in the door, then you take it off at the table, it defeats the whole point. And they're like, yeah, but you got to eat. I'm like, you see, you don't need a mask at all if you're going to do that.
No, it didn't matter.
And they go, but we have to. It's just like the toilet paper people that ran out and bought all the toilet paper and paper towels and caused a shortage from panic, right? Like they're not rational thinkers. They scared the hell out of everybody. And the news media could not clearly come out and explain anything to people. It was just they need Big Pharma to get a paycheck. and they need this real estate grab to go through. And it's like, yeah, after we've had the lockdowns long enough, close businesses enough, and get people addicted to Corona welfare, and then we'll move in. And it just
Ryan, can we keep you on? Can we keep you on for a little bit longer, or?
Yeah, I'll do another 10 minutes or so at least.
Okay, so I know LB's got to go. He's got a date. LB, you want to say your things?
Yeah. Hey, good luck.
So yeah, thank you. No, so I think one of the to kind of sum things up.
Can we just say that LB is the whitest person on the stream, and
he's white as Larry Bird.
You gotta get the lights with the.
Bro, I don't know what's wrong with the lights.
He's like a Cuban, he's like a Cuban vampire. It's weird.
Yeah. It is just the way my family looks. I am pale. The girl I'm seeing, she wants me to get.
There's nothing wrong with being whiter than Casper's ass.
So one of the things that I thought was really interesting, and I think this is the least I've ever talked on one of these Friend of Fed segments, and it's only a testament to the men that I've shared this stage with. So a pleasure to be on with Ryan, with Thomas, with Pete, and obviously the other two. You guys are cool too.
The other two, damn.
No, Mark, Jason, I love you guys.
Guess who's not coming back?
But was as probably I think the youngest person on this stream, is just how Trump has been omnipresent throughout my entire life, and how he has just morphed it and as you guys were laying out the history, I was like, oh yeah, he was there then, and he was there then. I mean, you basically was talking to early 90s. That's when I was born. So. But what I want, as we talk about it in terms of Friend of Fed,
they had sorry LB, they played Home Alone on our public broadcaster here in Canada, and they edited out the portion that Trump was in.
What the hell?
The part where he with the
Home Alone 2
because Trump could not be on television.
Yeah. And I think it's fascinating to watch. I was not somebody who supported Trump in 2016, and as far as 2024 is concerned, I would support him only in terms of the fact that I don't know where else the people's faith is going to go, because it's already in somebody like Trump. I don't know if that makes him a friend. I tend to think of him more as a Fed, just because of the fact that he didn't make for all the good things he did. He made a lot of poor decisions as well, especially with the people he chose to surround himself with. Right. This all being said, one thing that I think is always lost, and this is something I try to talk about on my show, which you can go to beenawake.com. I have some new programming notes that I'm going to be putting out soon as far as how I'm going to be changing the content I produce, but you can go to beenawake.com, subscribe with your email address, follow me on Twitter at the LB Muniz. But is the generational
send him your blood. He needs the color.
is the generational aspect to all of these things. Is the way it is. I'm reminded of the John Mayer song of Waiting on the World to Change, and the fact that some of what we're dealing with Trump is not necessarily the presidential candidate we need, but the presidential candidate we deserve at this point. And a lot of that has to do with the fact of the older generation holding on to wealth and not passing on the torch, and people still believing in old ideas. And frankly, the fact that all the terms don't make sense anymore, and nobody in power is bothering to actually explore these issues, save perhaps Tucker Carlson. I guess we'll see how that goes. Nobody's bothering to explore how these things are changing, or how the world is going to be different in 20 years with technology in the main space. And that's one of the reasons why outlets like CNN and the corporate press and the cabal of neocons and neoliberals are trying to maintain their grasp on power, because it was something set up to fight the Soviet Union, and it's not something that can exist in a multipolar world. So with that, I would say I would have to cast my vote for Fed, because I'm not quite sure that the Pied Piper strategy wasn't in fact a success. That doesn't mean that and that's just how I look at things. Again, he's probably going to be the Republican nominee. He's almost definitely going to be better than Biden or whoever else the Democrats put into place once they decide to get rid of him. But does that mean he's the best choice for the world or the country? I'm not quite so sure.
Better than RFK?
I mean, I just think RFK, if he was smart, he would be running as a Republican, is the reality.
Touche.
Yeah.
Instead, he's I
don't know, but
no, hang on, because RFK
is throw my argument against that. I've been saying for years, if you want to win, run in the popular thing, then do whatever the fuck you want.
Sure, but what I say, but RFK is party to that same thing. Despite the fact that he understands the corruption, he's still wanting to work within the current system, within the party that he's dedicated his life towards.
He's pretty bad on the green stuff.
Listen, I heard a good argument, which was, do you know how many low information, just straight up, because Canada's a little bit different than the US. The US, it's really like you're a Democrat because your parents were Democrats and their parents were Democrats, and you don't even watch the news. You vote by that thing. It's like almost religious. And there are a lot of low information Democrats who are going to see a Kennedy on the ballot and check the box. it's not necessarily a bad strategy to just go with the way people do things.
Yeah, entirely fair. But I
you
do have
should
to
come to Korea with that glow in the dark skin.
Yeah,
they'd love you.
Let's all wave goodbye to LB. Let's all pray that LB gets laid.
They could bottle that.
Oh Lord Jesus Christ!
Get a kiss
LB
today.
Cheers,
Thank
brother.
you, gentlemen.
Thanks for coming.
Let him get a kiss on his very white pee.
Is Thomas gone? Did he just peace out without a goodbye?
He did. He did. He was messaging saying he had to go.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, just read a super chat from Mark. Sorry, I don't want to mess up your name, man, but it's Mark Themi. This actually is more in the Ryan Johnson school. Sheldon Addison was a top donor in the 2016 Trump campaign. Fed case closed. Yeah,
really?
Well, he's dead. Yeah,
Adelson's dead.
He would go to all Republicans.
Oh, Sheldon Adelson. No, I heard who's the Victoria's Secret guy? Limited Brands.
Waxner.
Yeah. Okay. That I was like, what? No, but Adelson. Yeah, Adelson.
No,
was
Sheldon
Adelson
is the reason that Trump picked Bolton.
He's Wynn Hotels, right? Wynn Hotels is Adelson.
Yeah, he's dead too. So he's out. I have a holiday for his death on my calendar. He definitely gets a rainbow frog for that, the glorious day, because once he was gone, Bolton got fired, but Bolton made the working group, which culminated in the assassination of Soleimani, one of the dumbest things Trump did.
Oh, yeah, explain that.
So Jim Loeb wrote about it actually before I did, but John Bolton had a working group that May, I believe, and then Soleimani got killed. What was it, July 3rd or whatever it was? Someone can look that up, but it was like a few months beforehand. Anyway, they were just trying to cherry pick information OSP style to give a reason to kill Soleimani, and Trump kept saying no. But if they kill an American, I'll do it. And then so there was some anonymous mortar fire on an American base in Iraq where some Iraqi translator who had been an American all of 7 days gets killed. And then so they ran back to him and said, well, an American's been killed. Now you got to kill Soleimani. So he did it. But like Soleimani is the one that was really fighting ISIS and pushing out the Peshmerga and going after the Kurds. And, they took him out. And then that resulted in Iran retaliating and taking out a helicopter hangar and some other equipment. Supposedly no deaths, both sides say, to try and ease things down, but we don't know. But yeah, Soleimani was a stud. I mean, he was very loved in Iran. That was a stupid move. That could have started a war with Iran, and did result in a retaliatory strike. But he got pressured into that by the Bolton Group, and the Bolton Group Bolton's the one that ruined the Hanoi conference too. Like he went to, they're talking in North Korea, and John Bolton goes, "We're going to give you the Libya treatment." Excuse me. Okay. And in Libya, what was that? Gaddafi got rid of his Liberty, my ass. Like the Libya. They someone was mowing the lawn out there. I couldn't hear myself. Got tinnitus. So, but that was the Gaddafi got rid of his WMDs, and then he got invaded and killed.
In Asia, I don't believe.
Well, in Nara we got him.
You say you're in Tokyo, Asia, but really you're in Florida. I get it. I see the.
Nah, I can show you the rice field outside if you want. Seriously, there's a rice field right next to where I am.
Really? Yeah, let's see.
Yep. Yeah. Well, the front. Well, I won't get into that stuff, but yeah, there was a little bit of eminent domain in this area recently. But anyway,
you're in Taiwan now. Is that?
I'm in Japan.
Oh, you're in Japan. Okay, that's what I thought.
I'll be in Korea in like 8 hours.
Okay.
Going down there today. Yep. But no, I lived in Japan for 16 years. This is my last day.
I've seen some of your posts, and I like the high trust society shit.
Do you want to make it public while you're making
that stuff? We used to have, in parts of North Carolina, we could do that when I was a kid. You could just have a store, and it was on your honor to pay. But not anymore.
No.
I can't. And that's in a real rural area. I mean, Japan and Korea, you could be in the middle of Seoul, in the middle of Osaka, and there are stores that are just, they don't even have staff.
And is that a rule of law thing, or is that just purely cultural? Is it because you're going to get your hand chopped off?
It's illegal to steal, but that's not why. It's just I mean, they have vending machines where you can buy alcohol. You could buy vodka too, not just beer. Like you can go buy hard liquor in a vending machine with no ID or anything needed. It's just based on your honor.
You can just leave the money in a pot.
I think it's because they don't have a ring the bell media pushing degeneracy every day.
Right. Well, and fear.
Yeah, I don't think
it's
the law.
Hatred.
I'll give you a good example about like trying to legislate stuff. It's not utterly useless, like to have punishments for things and to make things illegal legal. But if you look at drug laws, for example, it's illegal to do heroin in Japan. It's illegal to do heroin in the UK and the United States too, but they do it anyway, right? You can get drugs in jail in the United States. It's because the demand's so high. So the reason we don't have a drug problem in Japan is not because they made it illegal. Same reason we don't have a murder problem or a fentanyl problem or a rape problem or any of that. All those things are illegal everywhere. Right. Like, no, I don't think it's legal to rape anywhere, not even the Vatican. But
sure,
maybe Epstein Island. Like, everyone has agreed, hey, don't kill people, and most societies have laws against, letting kids smoke crack or something, pretty obvious stuff. But what makes you not do drugs is not the state, it's yourself. As Dr. Paul said, like, really, are you going to run out and go smoke heroin or shoot it up or whatever if it's suddenly legal? Probably not, right? Like, you need the state to tell you not to do that. Seriously, your parents should tell you not to do that. You should know not to do that based on your own reasoning. So if you're only following stuff based on like whatever the law says to do or not, and you don't have your own moral compass or faculty of reason, then you're in a bad shape, because if they tell you to do something stupid, you'll do something stupid. I agree with Dr. King. Like, it's imperative to follow just laws, and it's imperative to ignore the unjust laws.
Yeah. René Girard basically said that all our desires are external. So and you can say desires, incentives. You can use that word wherever you want it, wherever you want. And because those things are external to us, we always look for models or moderators for those desires. So the only reason you want what you want is because of other people telling you what you want. You have no idea what to want. And as you're a father, you've seen this with your own kids. You go into a drawer, your kid wants to go in that drawer. They don't know what's in there. It's probably just like cutlery or something that they can't really use, but they're attracted to that drawer because you're going into that. It's where you give your attention, what people who attach authority to will drive their attention. And I think this is to kind of summarize all this stuff and tie into a bow, because I know, Ryan, you need to go, and thank you again for your time. This has been great. This has been this stream gave me more.
I'll say, I want to dovetail on what you just said. Was said by Marilyn Manson, talked about the connection between fear and consumerism, and people not knowing what they want. Sometimes you want something because it's functional and you need it, and that's what you want because you actually, it's useful. But a lot of people are just chasing status, and most things that will give you status aren't really functional or useful or anything. They just want they covet the envy of others, whether that's like, oh, I gotta have a whole bunch of girlfriends because other guys want that too. So they'll be impressed with me if I have this and that, or this fancy car or watch or whatever. Now, some people like cars, high-end cars, because they're fun to drive and whatever. Watch or a ring or something, there really is no point. Any watch tells time. They just want one that's expensive because it's a way of wearing status, without having to say it. You instantly know that person has money or whatever because they're wearing it on their wrist. Yeah. So, and it's okay if you want to chase status, but be aware that that's what you're doing. Okay, because I think a lot of people get a severe level of unhappiness who can't acquire the status, but they rely on external validation, and they have an external locus of control, and so their happiness is dependent upon how they perceive other people perceiving them, and they're not self-willed, and they don't have a sense of fulfillment based on their attributes or skills or anything. And this is what happens when you break a society, as the media does. I'm being careful with my words. When you break them,
we're on Rumble right now.
You prefer. Oh, I can say it. Okay, well, I don't know what your thing is. Yeah, part of what they're doing is they want to break your sense of self-worth to make you reliant on products. So you can get a sense like you're no longer just some hoodlum or whatever if you're wearing the Bape jacket, or before that the starter jacket, and the whatever kind of fancy whatever the cool shoe is today. I don't even pay attention to it. But when you have those things, you're somebody now. You know, it's status that you can purchase. It's not something you have to earn through skill or something that's within yourself, right? Some sort of talent. It's just something you can wear. So it's instantly copied, and instant validation wherever you go. And it's a real problem with the youth seeking external validation all the time. And some of it's completely unachievable. Like your life is not going to be a music video, right? But they're always going to compare themselves to Cardi B or whatever and feel unsatisfied and keep chasing and keep spending.
So in the Girardian theory, there's two distinct classifications here. There's memetics, there's modeling, and then there's mirroring. So modeling is actually trying to be like the thing, right? Trying to be like that person. Don Quixote is trying to be like the epic knights he reads in these stories, whether they're real or not. He's trying to be them and exemplify those characters. Mirroring is literally just surface level. You're trying to reflect the image of the image. And when you start getting into this sort of, refractal image of things, where the image is a mirroring of the image of the mirroring of the image, where you're no longer sure what the actual content is anymore, because it's all messaging, messed up with desire principles. It's basically just desire porn.
This is why you can see it in the language. Look at all the people that run around saying bro every other sentence. So bro this, bro, because they put that out there.
I don't want to say, because I don't want to get blocked for me on Twitter. That's bad,
Well, look, yeah, exactly. I will throw you out. I did that to fish out all the NAFO people, knowing that they wouldn't be able to resist, right? It's an easy attack. If I say, oh, I hate this, then they're all going to say it. And then I'm like, block, 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 block. So I can get rid of them so they can't mass flag me later. That was my strategy there. But it really is a thing, though. If you look at the terminology the spooks put out there, for example, grassy knoll. No one says knoll or grassy, okay? Not in the 60s and not today. By putting out the grassy knoll for the grassy knoll shooter and the JFK assassination, they get to track how effective that propaganda, how they're, how many people are repeating this phrase, right? Too big to fail.
Or Kiev.
Yeah, exactly. They want to see, are you going to say it like this? Are you going to use our terms? And so when everyone was saying literally this, literally that, that was 3-4 years ago. And now it's the bro culture. They put it out on like just deadbeat, mindless gaming streams on YouTube is where it starts. And then everyone's saying it, right? They want to see how deep that cuts and like which celebrities are most effective and trace it around. And it's affecting the language. You can see them unable to speak without saying this. It's that Valley Girl stuff where people in like California say like, you like. They can't get through a few sentences in a row without distancing all their opinions by saying the word like is a way of softening everything. Say, well, I didn't definitely say that. I said it was like that, right? Because they live in a place that's so judgmental that they can't have a normal opinion without softening it with filler words. And the word like is not just a normal filler word. It's a filler word that softens whatever you're going to say, because you're not making it definite. You're saying, well, it's sort of like something instead of it is something. And they have to be like that.
James Burnham laid it out in the Managerial Revolution, is that this entire system that's whether you agree with him a la carte or wholeheartedly, it's like we can certainly see some of that overlapping where the system that's in play right now is to diffuse responsibility, so no one can take responsibility for anything. That's been almost the State Departmenting of all the institutions, where, well, I mean, who takes ultimate responsibility for any decision? We can't say.
Well, responsibility, accountability, that sounds racist.
Right, and yet
that's what they do. Like,
yeah, and yet that's colonialist kind of.
It is white supremacy.
Yeah, being on time.
I have a question about Canada, real quick. You're in Canada, the People's Republic of Canada. Is it true that you're not allowed to pee standing up anymore?
Yes.
What?
You have to sit down
like
to pee?
2005.
Yeah.
It was Trudeau got in. It was the first rule he passed.
It was a federal mandate.
Pees on a can of Bud Lights.
Well, that's how they get Bud Light. It's actually just filtered Trudeau. It's just Trudeau piss.
It's just Canadian piss now. Yeah. It's like a North American pee.
Yeah, it's from the House. It's from the House of Commons. It's from Parliament right into a vat, and it's like Nestea. How Nestee's like just getting all the water to the
How did the country that made Trailer Park Boys get led by Trudeau and have a truckers in jail?
You're talking to two people who voted for Trudeau in 2014. And the reason
what was his Reddit? It was just because Harper was so bad before that.
Harper was. I don't think he was as bad as the media. I mean, I think a lot of this has been a growth process for a lot of people the past 10 years.
I have to add
getting older,
but Harper was pretty bad. I mean, even if we're talking about base politics in 2023, we can look back at the Harper regime. He sold the wheat. We had this sort of. He sold off a lot of things
into all the nitty gritty of it. I mean, but as far as Canadian politicians go, they're all terrible. But he wasn't the devil we believed him to be at the time. But obviously, the media here was very one sided.
But why Trudeau?
Look up clips of Trudeau's rhetoric.
Well,
first off, we're both Anglo Montrealers, which Trudeau is somewhat as well. He's also a federalist. There's a lot of intricate sort of macro politics. Where we believed that he would be on the side of Anglophone Quebecers. He's from, his family lives just up the street from where I live. And we thought maybe he would have something to play there that would resolve a lot of the longstanding identity politics issues in Canada, which he just made way worse.
Yeah.
And look at what he said on the campaign trail. He was bang on. He just, you took a chance on someone being that you had no idea whether they were what they said they were or not, and he was the exact opposite.
In 2014, the worst thing facing Canada at the time was a general sense that Stephen Harper was silencing scientists and economic bureaus, and basically just stacking the deck towards whatever ends he had, which was nebulous. Right? It was never really well defined. I mean,
he was a bad guy.
Who is Canada? Do y'all who's the equivalent of Ron Paul, the Canadian?
Maxime Bernier.
Bernier. All right.
He's the best we've got. He's very much like Ron Paul in that he's not charismatic. He's not a good speaker. It's akin to the RFK thing when you're running for a role that is.
I think Ron Paul was charismatic when they let him talk. They give him 2 minutes. I think that's what's going to happen to RFK. Like, he'll get on the debate stage, and they'll give him 2 minutes to speak. And or just there's RFK Jr. Whatever. Somebody pops a balloon. Everyone's like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah.
Sorry to cut that short, but you can watch the whole thing on ancreport.com. As you can see, I got a shelf set up while that was playing. Some other things. Still got to go get a table to attach this mic arm to. But that was fun. And Pete Quinones was on in the beginning. He kind of left when I arrived, but we've done some shows together, especially on the American Civil War as well as the Unabomber Manifesto. You can go check that out on his sites, Free Man Beyond the Wall. And let's see, he's also still on Twitter, at least for the next 6 weeks. We had a Shekelchat on Rumble from P1 Dizzy 49, so it's not a Ulysses Grant. It says, "Welcome back to Korea, RD. Try not to get oven from Twitter. Happy Mother's Day to all the good moms." Thank you for reminding me. Now I can go get a present. And they became a monthly supporter. You can become a monthly supporter on Rumble, and it gives you little tags. She's got the icon of, I have a gold pot with a clover and a set of turkey feathers, which is showing, that's where you donate on ANC Report, Anti-Neocons. See if we got any other questions. I'm scrolling through the Rumble chats. I don't see anything. Not on Odysee today. There's I got some issues with them, and they also, like, when you log in from a new place, you have to do all this crap. Switch countries too fast for them, whatever. Not on Cozy either, because that place is just too degenerate and unfixable. I gave them months of my time, put out the documentaries and things. It's just not worth it. People were taking delight in my handicapped cousin with cerebral palsy, nearly dying. I just thought, okay, that's it. That's it for me. I don't care who you are. Like a handicapped man dying of sepsis. You think that's funny? That's not just like edgy trolling jokes or anything. That's just fucked up. That's psychotic, really. Let's see. So other news. You know what we can do? So I don't have to hold this up the whole time. Is just do our Ukraine update on Telegram. I'll give you a quick rundown because I put some updates. So I'll just read this to you. There's been a lot of fake news about Ukraine recently. It seems they did a PR campaign in tandem with their attempted offensive. They raided the Russian telegrams to create some panic because a lot of the pro-Russian people are moles. But a lot of the reported gains, they said, not all, but most of the reported gains, they said, were fake. They did attack Soledar with about a 1,000-man, 40-tank probe, but that got repulsed. And then as this was happening, they did get a little bit of gains in the little creek area south of the Bakhmut salient, where they have there's a pincer in the north and the south. They hit the northern one and didn't do anything. They hit the southern one, and it looks like Russia withdrew beyond the creek line to the high ground, which is reasonable since it's mostly infantry and the weather is permitting mechanized warfare again. You don't want to be sitting on flat ground. Well, all those new toys the Ukrainians have, so they've pulled back to the higher ground. And they also gained about 210 meters in Bakhmut, Russia did. There's only 27 buildings left in Bakhmut, but it is the citadel. That is the high-rise on a little bit of, they have basement areas and stuff. 27 buildings to go. They're going, street by street, gobbling that up. And then it will be there as the hold. Over in Zaporozhye, they did some probing that got repelled. Russia, however, has been taking out the warehouses storing anti-air ammunition. And it looks like some of the Leopard 2s that as soon as they came across the border, they got hit while they were in the warehouse from above. And then the big thing is the bridge to Moldova has been taken out. And that's something you can't be like, it's propaganda. Go look at it. It's gone. And that is the supply route to Odessa from NATO. So that has been blown to bits. I mean, you can still get supplies there the slow way, but that's over because that had a rail line and a highway, and that's been cut and physically blown to pieces. You notice they haven't cut the other bridges across the Dnieper, which means they might be willing to use them themselves, or they enjoy Ukraine bleeding themselves. They've made this plan, instead of incrementally taking land, Russia would rather, they are taking Bakhmut in Soledar, but it seems like they'd rather play on the defense and drain Ukraine's manpower, war of attrition, instead of expanding the front line. Why? Well, you don't need the territory, because you're not going to get them to run out of money or manufacturing, because everything's being manufactured in NATO and all the money's from America. So the only way you can really win this war of attrition is taking out personnel, because that's something you can't replace. It takes a long time to have a baby and have them grow up to be 17 or 18. They're running out of people. They will never run out of money because they have America's money. Even when they were running out of ammo, they're running out of artillery, NATO didn't have any left. So they bought 500,000 rounds from Korea, and they're buying some more from Egypt, which has, I think, the largest Soviet stockpile in the world is in Egypt. So there's a few more years of artillery shells. They are running short on AA for the S-300s, and they're also running out of the S-300s themselves are running out of the anti-air defense itself, not just the ammo. They'll probably switch and get some more Patriot systems in and stuff, but they really don't have enough air defense, which is allowing fixed-wing aircraft to just wreak havoc across Ukraine. But there are ways to get around that. Ukraine's going to have to go on the offense and make a major push with a mechanized division, frogmen, everything they can throw to get some sort of victory here, because they're getting war weary. The lights are out, the power's out, they're on rationed food, and yet on the Russian side, lights are on, supply lines are tight. They're not moving. I want to say something else. Gonzalo Lira was arrested. I mean, that was before I went back to Japan. It was like as I was getting on the plane. I hope he's doing well. I don't know exactly what he got arrested for. He was just saying his things he's always said, but just another stunt. What's it matter? Well, he's giving reports about the Ukraine-Russia conflict in English, but from Ukraine. He's saying the same kind of stuff I say and many other people say. Of course, they'd probably like to arrest us too. But anyway, let's go look at Rumble. There's some Dramasphere stuff. Who cares? Fuentes got in I guess you could call it a physical fight. Whatever that was. I think the Dramasphere stuff just needs to go. We're going to be on Red Ice Thursday. I got a bunch of Epstein news to unleash. And then Friday, we have the sequel on Fresh and Fit. We're going to be going over the Israeli art students, Ziad Al-Jarrah and that thing, the Tennessee Cell, the DJ story, Anthrax. That's a big one. If we can get all those topics in 2 hours or so, maybe 3 hours. And then we'll do another show regardless, just debunking all the kook stuff. And then I have some more I want to run by, see if they want to go over the 9/11 Commission, how compromised it was, the process of getting the 28 consecutive redacted pages unredacted, what we did. Yeah. And then, there's more on the 93 bombing that I already put up with Adam Fitzgerald. My goal is going to be to do a 9/11 symposium with Adam and Nelson and myself somewhere in the U.S. We've hit Texas twice and D.C. twice, so somewhere else. I'm thinking Florida or New York. Kind of leaning toward Florida because I feel like the weather is better and people like to go there anyway. Plus, I might be able to go to Miami and do something with Sneeko or Myron or something. So there's that. But New York is obviously more affected by September 11th. And the advantage there is we could go to the 9/11 Memorial and explain things, which I did. And I had cops following me around last time I did that. We could even see urban movies and films. It'd be kind of neat to be in New York too. But I'm going to listen to the people around me and we'll pick a location. But that's probably going to be September or August, somewhere in there. Let's see. Yeah, happy Mother's Day to all, except for Nancy Pelosi. Does she even have children? I don't know. Regardless, she doesn't get a happy Mother's Day. Trump killed CNN. Destroyed them. And it's pretty bad, but it's, they are so much worse that you just got to enjoy it. I kind of miss this guy. All right. Well, thank you, P1 Dizzy, for the Shekelchats. Thank everybody else for following. We'll have a proper stream with a proper mic arm attachment in office. I'll get these boxes unpacked today. So we'll see you on the other side. Peace.